Introduction. I have no idea how you're doing as you begin listening to this audiobook, but I'm going to guess you're stressed. That's a pretty accurate diagnosis these days because, well, who isn't stressed? You and I live with time pressures our great-grandparents could not have imagined. Yes, they had pressures too. Things like crop yields, droughts, and early frosts that threaten the harvest, or the tyranny and backbreaking conditions of factory life. But my stress, and perhaps yours, is a little different. For those of us who might call ourselves knowledge workers, entrepreneurs, teachers, engineers, software developers, physicians, nurses, managers, graphic designers, administrators, accountants, pastors, social workers, analysts, attorneys, leaders, or highly motivated stay-at-home parents with dreams, our challenges feel real, but are usually hard to diagnose. It is hard to figure out what is making us so stressed. Here's the truth: you deserve to stop living at an unsustainable pace. What if instead you learned how to live at your best, personally and professionally? That is what this audiobook is about. I hope it provides both a reasonable diagnosis for you and some welcome relief. I also hope it makes you stop feeling guilty. I am guessing that, unlike your ancestors' difficulties, most of your problems stem from having too much, not too little. Too many demands, too many opportunities, too much information, too many distractions, too many choices, too many people vying for attention, and way too much stuff on the calendar. I get it. It got to be so much for me that back in 2006, the overwhelm, overcommitment, and overwork almost took me out. As I touch on in this audiobook, I burned out that year. At first, I thought that is what this was going to be about, my journey into burnout and how to fight back. But audiobooks take on a life of their own, and instead, what I have created is far more about the cure than the problem. My friend John, a New York Times best-selling author and highly sought-after speaker, once asked me this question. So, do you have to burn out? Is it just a rite of passage that every leader has to go through? Can't you write a life story where there's no burnout chapter? John was in his late 30s when he asked me that question, just a few years younger than I was when I burned out back in 2006. John is also a devoted husband and father of 2 teenage girls. He asked a relevant question. According to one study, more than 70% of adults in their 20s and 30s are experiencing at least some level of burnout. That means a stunning number of young adults are feeling worn out from work and life before they even hit their 40th birthday. Recently, I delivered a keynote talk to leaders in Dallas. The conference host thought it would be a good idea to do an instant poll of the 800 leaders in the room to see how many people identified with burnout symptoms. The question was simple. In your view, over the last year, how many times have you experienced burnout symptoms? The options were never, once or twice, regularly, or constantly. While the poll was not scientific, the results stopped me in my tracks. Of the 800 leaders gathered, 93% identified as having wrestled through some degree of burnout in the last year. Only 7% answered, never. When I saw the live results appear on the screen, I had to stop talking. I choked up. Maybe you are one of the 93%. Or maybe you are one of the 7% like John who would say, not me, and I really don't want to end up there. Which brings us back to John's question. Is burnout inevitable? I did not have a good answer when he asked that a few years ago. I have a better one now. No, John, you do not have to burn out. It is not inevitable. And if you are one of the 93%, you do not need to stay there. I did not, and you do not have to either. That said, stress and its popular cousin, burnout, are spreading like an epidemic. And, like other diseases, sometimes you have it without even realizing what is going on. Maybe you started listening to this audiobook or had it suggested to you, but thought, I am stressed out, but no way am I burned out. You are perpetually tired, a bit numb, and continually overwhelmed, but you just call it normal because, well, all that feels so normal these days. So this is not a burnout book. It is instead a stay out of burnout book. Things are so different for me now than they were when I burned out. The world is actually a little busier, crazier, and more complicated than it was back in 2006. But inside me, there is a deeper peace, a greater sense of joy, and a way of dealing with the constantly escalating demands of life and leadership that have resulted in my being able to get far more accomplished in far less time. This audiobook is designed to help you find that peace, joy, and much higher productivity too. One final note before we get started. You will soon discover, if you have not already, that I am a person of faith. In addition to working briefly in law and now running a leadership company full-time, I served as the pastor of a local church for 2 decades. If that is not anything like your background, do not let it throw you off. While my life and approach to leadership are fueled by my faith, I have intentionally created this so that the principles work regardless of your faith perspective, because so many people need hope, and so many people need help. I hope this framework provides some practical, powerful strategies for you that will help you for decades to come. It is time to take your life and leadership back. Are you ready? Now let's begin Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Build a Life You Don't Want to Escape From. Why most of us secretly resent the life and career we've so carefully built. A decade and a half ago, life seemed to be way more than what I had signed up for and could handle. The organization I was leading had grown bigger than I ever expected it to, and the pressures of leading a staff, handling growth, being married for over a decade, and raising 2 young sons were more than I had bargained for. After I pulled into the driveway at home one evening, I sat in the car. The sun had disappeared just long enough that it was neither day nor night. It was gray. I was listening to the radio, but not really listening. In my mind, I was grappling with whether I had the energy to walk through the door. I thought to myself, I'm guessing dinner won't be ready. Everything's probably running behind again. The moment I walk in and decide to lie down on the couch to recharge, not only will I get the eye roll from Tony, my wife, but I will also have 2 kids who bounce over to me, wanting to play. Homework is not done, that is for sure. The last thing I feel like doing is helping with homework, especially math. Then I wondered, has anyone seen me yet? I have not seen anyone pass by the front window. Maybe I should put the car in reverse and head back to work. Ugh! As soon as my mind went there, I realized that was no solution. There were just as many issues to deal with at the office, probably more. So nope, not work. Maybe swing by Andrew's place? Wait, I have not texted him in a month, 6 weeks. That will not work. How is any of this going to get any better? How can I get out of this? I need to escape. I cannot tell you how many times in that season I wanted to get away. Maybe not escape for real, as in quit my job, take a massive pay cut, destroy my career, and make my wife think again that she had made a horrible mistake. But I wanted to break free in some way. Like a 5-year-old who decides he has had enough of his family, packs a spare t-shirt and bandana in a backpack, and storms off down the street. The weird thing was that in my case, everything was going exceptionally well, at least from the outside looking in. I had married my college sweetheart, and we had 2 healthy sons. Career-wise, I had moved from radio to law to, of all things, pastoring a local church. Yes, I know, a career path most high school guidance counselors highly recommend. What I thought would be an 18-month assignment in small rural churches ended up turning into decades with the same people in a Toronto area multi-site congregation. By the end of my first decade there, we had become the fastest growing church in our denomination and one of the larger ones in the country. Success, right? Well, on many fronts, yes, except inside me the pressure kept intensifying. I did not really know how to lead a growing team. I pretended I did, but my strategy of making it up as I went along was wearing thin, mostly on other people. I was also overrun by the number of people who were by then attending our church. Memorizing names, which at one point I had been really good at, had become an exercise in futility as my brain constantly tripped into overload. I'd say things like, "So good to see you here, you must be new. What's your name again?" To which they'd reply, "It's Dave, same name as last week and when we met the week before." "Right, Dave," I'd say. "Yes, that actually happened. Who wants a pastor who does not remember your name?" My formula for handling growth was as simple as it was stupid. More people equals more hours. As a result, I was cheating sleep, which made me feel simultaneously comatose and irritable most days. I had no insight into how to lead anything bigger if the growth continued, other than to work harder, which I was beginning to sense would send me over some kind of cliff to an early demise. I had had quite a bit of optimism earlier in my leadership, but recently I had started to wonder, am I enough? My inability to keep up at work also meant I was starting to fail at home. My family rarely got the best of me. Something as small as stepping on a Lego piece in bare feet could lead to a meltdown that lasted all day. These are just a few snapshots of my life at the time. It all felt so unsustainable. If things got any more complicated or any busier, I was going to go the way of a cheese puff in a windstorm. Worse, I was not even 40 yet. Please do not tell me there are decades more of this ahead, which leads us back to the escape thing. It was not a hammock in Fiji that I kept thinking about, or an alternate life in some new city with better coffee shops. No, I wanted to escape to a warehouse. Unlike my current day job, the warehouse offered so many attractive features. Managing cardboard boxes would be much simpler than managing the challenges of leadership. Unloading a pallet had so much more appeal than having yet another person unload on me in my office. And the best thing about working in a warehouse is that when you stack boxes, they stay stacked. This being in stark contrast to people who never seem to do what you want them to do. It is not like any part of my life was something I did not want or had not helped craft. Yes, life is unpredictable, and no, I could not have forecast the details, but I had signed up for all of it, except, of course, for the stress. It was like the life I had so carefully built turned on me, betrayed me. It was nothing like it was supposed to be. When I was living a life I wanted to escape from, I felt like I never had enough time to get done what really mattered, let alone everything else that was stacked up for me to tackle. My energy level was perpetually low, as though I were toggling between autopilot and the zombie universe. Sometimes it seemed like I was one bad day away from deflating completely. And as far as my priorities went, it was as though I had almost no control over my life, because what I wanted to do got hijacked by other people and commitments on a daily, no hourly basis. I did not want to screw my life up, but I had a sinking feeling that is precisely what I was doing. I was overwhelmed, overcommitted, and overworked, doing exactly what I thought I wanted to do with my life. Equally disheartening was the reality that my dreams were getting squeezed out in the process. I had always wanted to write a book. Prior to age 40, I had typed exactly 0 words in pursuit of that dream. My family was not hitting our financial goals. To make it worse, I had no hobbies. I never found time to exercise, and I quietly resented people who made the time to enjoy life. I was barely surviving. Many people are overwhelmed, overcommitted, and overworked, doing exactly what they thought they wanted to do with their lives. Eventually, it all caught up with me. In 2006, not only did my unsustainable pace crush me, it also nearly killed me. I slid headlong into burnout. I spent months with my passion gone, my energy sapped, and my hope barely flickering. It was not the end, but it definitely felt like it. I was numb. It was like my body went on strike and said, "Enough with the craziness." If you do not declare a finish line to your work, your body will. On that note, any idea what chronic stress might be doing to your body? Sure, maybe you have not burned out. But if you do not think that stress costs you anything, you might want to think again. Let's talk about the price of stress. Stress can apparently do some real damage. The American Psychological Association noted that the impact of stress can include headaches, chronic pain, shortness of breath, and full-on panic attacks. Stress has also been linked to heartburn, acid reflux, bloating, nausea, indigestion, the loss of sexual desire, lower sperm count, lower sperm motility, and the inability to conceive. In addition, stress can adversely affect memory function, slow your reaction time, and create behavioral and mood disorders. Lovely. Stress can also impair communication between your immune system and your HPA axis, a complex, multi-organ feedback system that regulates stress hormones, including cortisol. I had not heard of that either until I looked it up. Apparently, stress raises your cortisol levels, which in turn can spawn a host of physical and mental health issues, like chronic fatigue, diabetes, obesity, depression, and autoimmune disorders. Research also links stress to cardiovascular problems as life-threatening as heart attacks and strokes. This, surprisingly, is only a partial list of the damage stress can do. But need we say more? I did not think so. Technology only makes this all more complicated. You used to have to go to the office to work. Now, thanks to your phone, the office goes to you. A beautiful gift to all of us who are workaholics. Our inability to control our use of technology is making us sicker, more anxious, and more distraught than ever before. So all that said, do you have any idea what your personal stress level is? To help you find out, I designed a short burnout quiz that can give you a rough idea of how high your current stress level is. You can take it for free at yourBestToday.com. The results, while non-scientific, can give you an idea of what your personal burnout level is. You did not sign up for a disease-riddled existence spawned by your lifestyle. Neither did I. Yet practically all of us are overwhelmed, overcommitted, and overworked. Parents feel perpetually behind. Retired people are stressed, so are entry-level employees and high school students, who are increasingly being rattled by anxiety and panic attacks. Meanwhile, entrepreneurs, mid-level managers, nurses, lawyers, tradespeople, first responders, accountants, church leaders, and even the medical doctors who diagnose our stress find themselves deluged just trying to keep up with everything. Which is really quite remarkable. After all, how did the most prosperous people who ever lived, which is everyone in the developed world in the 21st century, make their lives about survival? Seriously, you and I hardly have to make our own loincloths or hunt deer in the forest to feed our families. There is little about your life or mine that requires us to merely survive, but in the midst of being the most affluent and free people who ever lived, we have enslaved ourselves to survival. How on earth did we get to the place where we say things like this? I just need to make it to summer vacation. Let me survive final exams. Really, my goal is to get through to July and then all will be good, I hope. Many of us have found ourselves in a place we did not want to be, resenting the life and career we have so carefully built. Or if we are not there yet, we are getting close. So let me ask you, are you eager to escape? Is your life filled with activity on the outside and emotional emptiness on the inside? The first thing to do is face up to the reality. Let's be clear, it is not just a season. To revive some semblance of hope amid all the overwhelm, maybe you tell yourself that the stress you are feeling and the crazy busy life you are living is fine because it is just a season. I spent the first decade of my time in leadership convincing myself that I was just in a busy period. It seemed like a plausible explanation. After all, I was carrying so much, so I would tell my friends and family, yeah, it's crazy now, but it's just a busy season. When I would see them a month later, we would repeat the whole conversation. Eventually, my friends and family started mocking me, as only friends and family do. They would say, "You're always in a busy season. That's what you say every single time." Ha! They were right. Their honesty made me finally get honest with myself. My repeated explanations of the new thing that was making life crazy, and how everything would be better once the project, trip, holiday, or year was over, made me sound like a guy who had not taken the time to listen to his futile little script in a while. Do not use the same excuse I did. Seasons, after all, have beginnings and endings. If your busy season has no ending, it is not a season. It is your life. I am not trying to bring you down. I am trying to help you out. Maybe it is time to tell yourself the truth about what has been happening in your life. To help you see it in a fresh light, let me put a twist on this. What might you say to the generation coming after you if you were absolutely truthful about what you have discovered life is really like? Would you say something like this? Imagine yourself stepping up to a podium to deliver your first commencement address and telling a college graduating class something like this. I am honored to be with you today at your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Most people, in a moment like this, try to inspire you. I am here to inform you because, kids, the truth is your friend. You are likely wondering what is ahead. Let me give you a snapshot. To begin with, most of you are in debt beyond any comfortable level. Good luck paying that back, but here's a sneak peek of the future you have financed. If you are not already in love, maybe you will find someone soon and settle down. You will get a job, hopefully a career job if you are that lucky. At some point, if you are so inclined, you may even have kids. But underneath, there will be undiagnosed pain, an unspoken sense that there is a meaningful calling for you, but your life is spinning out of control, and you cannot even pause long enough to discover why. As you sit in an office day after day, slowly suffocating, you will live with this angst of never coming close to what you suspect you might have been. You will not fully understand the anxiety, of course, but it will eventually dawn on you that this life you had anticipated for so long is one that most days you long to escape. For some of you, the escape will happen every day at 4 o'clock or 5 or 9, whenever you can finally head home or close the laptop for good. You will end up binge-watching your favorite show over takeout because you are too tired to cook, or scrolling social media until your eyes sting and you fall asleep, phone still in hand. Some of you will find your escape in a third glass of bourbon or wine most nights. Or you will unwind with a joint or another trip to the fridge because reality feels a little too heavy to carry. For still others among you, it will be the prescription medication you are no longer taking as directed. Or you will find yourself drifting away from the people closest to you and flirting online with people you used to know in high school because your current relationship is oh so dull, despite what your Instagram feed suggests. Or maybe you will live for the weekend, or your next vacation, or the lake, or the game, or the pool, or your next massage. Anything but what you're doing right now. Some of you will bury your pain with, ironically, more work. Workaholism is, after all, the most rewarded addiction in the nation. You can be fired for drinking too much, but working too much usually gets you promoted. It also gets you a raise, so you dump yourself into bed exhausted most nights, only to do it all again tomorrow. Finally, a small number of you will not lapse into any of those patterns. Instead, you will soldier on and endure 4 decades of banality to achieve the dream of having a decent life when you retire, assuming you live that long. All this and more awaits you, my friends. Welcome to life as we know it. Well, how is that for distressing? As dismal as it is to hear, that is the script an inordinate number of highly successful people adopt. Most of us have embraced some version of it. I did. You probably have. So here we are as a culture. Busy is the default. Slammed is normal. Crazy time is all the time. Life has been reduced to going through the motions. Bottom line, this much stress is reality, and it is not okay. Here is the good news. You do not have to live a life that stresses you out every day. Just because this is your life now does not mean this has to be your life forever. It was not for me, and it will not be for you either. It is time to burn the script. The script that passes for normal life for millions of people has got to go. I would love for you to decide today that you are going to tear it up. On second thought, go further. Burn it. Get a can of gas, throw a match on it, and watch the last ember drift off into space. That is what I did. On the other side of my burnout, I was determined to live in a fundamentally different way. I had no idea how to do that. So I spent the next few years listening to others and hiring coaches and counselors to help me figure out how to live in a whole new way. I was tired of feeling like I was always out of time, sick of dragging my feet through day after endless day, and more than done with putting in an 8 or 10-hour day and feeling like I had accomplished everything for everyone else and nothing on my own to-do list, despite giving it my best shot. If that is what normal was, I was done. I had a choice to make. Instead of heading to a warehouse or hammock, or abandoning everything I had built over my life to date, I decided to change the one thing I could change: me. I rebuilt my life. My family did not change. I stayed married to the same woman and committed to our 2 sons. I kept the same job, not saying you have to, because it is not a prerequisite for transformational change. We did not even leave town. I just changed what I was doing with my days and how I was doing it. As I studied top performers, I realized they moved way past time management and were highly focused on managing not just their time, but their energy. Usually they had one thing in common. They did what they were best at when they were at their best. In other words, they worked in their area of principal gifting and passion when their energy was at its highest during the day. As a result, they got their top priorities accomplished day in and day out. I started to implement that rhythm in my own life as a keystone habit. So while not much on the outside changed, I started to change for the better. I got my life back and my leadership back. Learning how to better use my resources also proved surprisingly effective in restoring my heart, defeating my cynicism, and giving me back a joy in living that I had thought was gone forever. Let me get specific. After I started doing what I was best at when I was at my best, I saw our congregation grow to 3 times the size it was before I burned out. I worked through the funk in my marriage to find a place where my wife and I felt genuinely in love again. I published 5 books in 11 years. I launched a leadership podcast and started a blog that now reaches millions of leaders a year. I traveled about 100 days a year, speaking around the world and investing in leaders. I started a company that produces resources that help people thrive in life and leadership. I discovered 3 hobbies I love, began exercising, lost 20 pounds, and started getting a full night's sleep pretty much every night. I enjoyed more time off than I ever had in my adult life and spent more time with my family than ever while being more effective at work. At the time, I had no idea how well the changes I made would set me up for the digital revolution of smartphones, social media, and 24/7 access that was right around the corner. But the transformation was pivotal to helping me thrive during the coming deluge. All this might sound a little over the top, but the best part is that similar things have been happening in the lives of thousands of other people whom I have had the privilege of teaching as they have adopted the principles we will cover. Doing what you are best at when you are at your best unlocks potential and freedom on a scale that shocks a lot of people who try it. It has the potential to change everything. Here's how you can get everything that is working against you to start working for you. As I have already hinted, if you look at how you navigate your life, regardless of where you are, what you do, or whom you do it with, you deal with 3 primary assets: time, energy, and priorities. Whether you are writing your last college exam, launching your company, landing an account, spending the day off site with your team, waking up on your day off, getting the kids' lunches packed, or even taking a vacation at the beach, every day you fight for how your time, energy, and priorities are spent. For years, it felt like time, energy, and priorities were working against me. When you do not have an intentional strategy for how to manage those 3 assets, that is exactly what happens. But I have been living a whole different way for a decade and a half now, and I want to help you learn to make the most of your own time, energy, and priorities. What if you could control your calendar and learn how to say no without the threat of losing friends or influence? What if you could become much better at what you do while working fewer hours? What if you could protect your time, prioritize your family, and still crush it at work? Applying what they have learned from these principles, people I've taught have achieved beautiful results. One couple, Jeff and Al, charted the energy levels of their 80-member staff and reorganized their meeting schedules to raise productivity and deepen employee engagement. Christina discovered insane levels of productivity to develop a phone app, work out, and spend more time with her newborn. John lost 70 pounds by making time for eating healthier, exercising, and getting a full night's sleep. He also built a deck on his house, started hiking, and took up a hobby. Stephen started a blog, something he had wanted to do for a long time. These are just a few of the true stories. Constant stress denies so many people permission to dream or to accomplish what they are called to do. What most people have discovered when they apply these principles is that there is a much better way to live than barely making it through the day, only to get up and repeat the drudgery tomorrow. What is your dream? I love asking people what their dreams are. Sometimes the dreams feel big. Entrepreneurs cast vision about the new idea that they are struggling to get off the ground amid a million obstacles. CEOs tell me how much they long to find an alternative to the incessant pressure. I have talked to so many people who want to write a book or launch a podcast, but just cannot find the bandwidth to pull it off. Sometimes the dreams are so simple they make me smile, because all of us have beautiful things and people who somewhere along the line got squeezed out of our lives. One woman told me that what she really wanted was a weed-free garden. Her plants used to be so life-giving to her. Another told me she used to paint watercolors and would love to get back the spark that painting created in her life. Fathers tell me they miss seeing their kids' games, and they are done with showing up late for school plays. Mothers tell me they are tired of being disengaged from the kids they love and sick of feeling like they cannot give their kids what they really need. Others tell me they just want an actual day off with zero interruptions for once. You probably have a dream, or maybe even a calling, that went into hiding long ago or seems so impossible that you are afraid to say it out loud or even admit it to yourself. In this journey ahead, you are going to get space to dream again and learn the strategy that will free up the time to pursue that dream. I do not know what your goals and dreams are or what your calling in life is, but I do know it is possible not only to become de-stressed, to avoid burnout and to come back from it, but also to thrive, to live fully alive. I would love for you to pull yourself out of the soul-sucking bog that passes for existence and embrace an approach that will be so much more life-giving, to truly be at your best, not somebody else's best, but yours. That is what this audiobook is about. If you stick with it through the next few hours together, you will see results you may never have thought were possible. And when you are done, you will have built a life that you no longer want to escape from. Instead, you might actually love it. This brings us to the next chapter. Chapter 2, No More Crazy Busy Life. Live in a way today that will help you thrive tomorrow. If you listen to the advice designed to help people who are overwhelmed and stressed, which is dispensed by friends, advisors, and online gurus, the standard tips for beating your crazy busy life often sound like this. First, get an adequate amount of sleep each night. Second, engage in regular physical exercise. And third, maintain health in your most important relationships. It is all really solid advice. There are only a few problems with it. First, you already know all that. Second, if that is all it took, you could be in a state of bliss tomorrow. And third, even when practiced, those 3 therapies barely take the edge off. Even decently rested people who have friends and can bench press a tiny house are stressed out, so your struggle continues. Another regular piece of well-intentioned advice is to take more time off. Make sure, the gurus say, that you get a regular day off each week or take the full weekend. Recharge and renew. Others will add that you should take all your vacation time. Again, that is a really good idea. If you work for a really progressive company or nonprofit, maybe they will even give you a sabbatical. Then, once every 7 years, you get to leave, probably exhausted for a few months off. You live a temporarily magical life, only to interrupt the bliss to head back into life in the suburbs, where you will quickly grow resentful of your next 7 years. I have often been puzzled by why sabbaticals, long vacations, proper sleep, and even exercise rarely solve the problems of burnout and feeling perpetually overwhelmed. Here is why. Time off will not heal you when the problem is how you spend your time on. It is ludicrous to think that a few days off here or a few months off there are going to resolve the issues created by a perpetually overwhelming life. Taking a day off or a vacation as a solution to feeling chronically overwhelmed is about as strategic as telling an alcoholic that he should stop drinking on Thursdays. Plus, this way of thinking, where days off are the answer, leaves you longing to be somewhere else. You will spend your life working for the weekend. Living for time off is just another form of escaping. Days off, vacations, and even sabbaticals are not a complete solution for an unsustainable pace. A sustainable pace is the solution for an unsustainable pace. Let's look at pattern recognition. You may have seen your story in the first chapter, but underneath your story is a series of patterns that shaped your story. In fact, your life consists of a series of ongoing patterns. I know you probably think you are more creative than that. I like to think I am. But try moving the toothbrush to another drawer, taking a different route home from work, or sitting in a different spot at the dinner table tonight, and you will see what I mean. Most of us are far more creatures of habit than we realize. Some of the patterns you are currently repeating have taken you into what I have named the stress spiral, a place where you feel perpetually overwhelmed, overcommitted, and overworked. See if you recognize these dynamics. First, there is unfocused time. Here's how the stress spiral pulls you in and under. You and I get the immense gift of time handed to us every day, but we live like we never have enough of it. One of the key reasons is our failure to focus time. We have a tendency to treat all waking hours as though they were the same, even though they are not. Think about it. Having a conversation with your significant other at 3 p.m. is probably a very different experience from having one at 3 a.m. Even though you intuitively sense the difference there, if you are like many people, for most of your waking hours you really do not channel your time intentionally. As a result, you usually do your most important things randomly, squeezing them into leftover slots, or sometimes not tackling them at all. You fail to use your most productive hours to do what you are best at. Not focusing your time means you do not intentionally assign specific activities to designated time windows. Meetings happen randomly. Interruptions and distractions dominate your unscheduled time, so even when you set aside a few hours to get things done, your time usually gets hijacked. You get frustrated with other people interrupting you and taking up your time. But as you will see, the reason other people do not value your time is that you do not, or at least you have not learned to yet. Consequently, you live with a constant sense of time famine. Your to-do list only seems to expand, and the gnawing sense of scarcity keeps growing. Even though you sometimes cheat sleep to try to catch up, you rarely seem to get ahead and feel guilty about working long hours to keep up. Your answer to everything is try harder or get more efficient, but nothing seems to relieve the tension or solve the problem. The good news is that having unfocused time is 100% fixable. Next, there is unleveraged energy. While almost all people caught in the stress spiral realize they are competing with time and for time, few ever pay attention to their energy, other than to complain about having low amounts of it, which is a shame because energy, even low energy, can be leveraged in a way that is surprisingly helpful. Unleveraged energy springs from failing to cooperate with your personal energy levels as they rise and fall over the course of the day. Not leveraging your energy means you squander your most productive hours, not because you intend to, but because you do not know when they happen or how to schedule your life around them. When you finally get to your most important tasks or people, you are too tired to engage deeply, or are at least far less engaged than you could be. Vocationally, your most important work usually suffers because you do not spend your best energy doing it. Relationally, your family and your closest coworkers and staff rarely get the best of you. Finally, we have hijacked priorities. The stress spiral pulls you in even further when your best intentions get jettisoned because your priorities got hijacked. Hijacked priorities happen when you allow other people to determine what you get done. I know that was a simple sentence, but let me repeat it. Hijacked priorities happen when you allow other people to determine what you get done. For people caught in the stress spiral, that pretty much describes every day of their lives, including days off. As a result, despite their determination to get ahead, they spend much of their day responding to the daily bombardment of messages, texts, emails, and other interruptions. This leads them to feeling like they never have bandwidth to get done what they are supposed to do. People whose priorities get consistently hijacked usually have not learned how to say no. Often they do not even realize they are allowed to say no. Even if they understand that saying no is important, they do not know how to do it in a way that does not burn bridges or offend people. No wonder they are stressed. Those, in a nutshell, are the patterns you will find in the lives of people caught in the stress spiral. They were my patterns too. The stress spiral is so pernicious that falling into it is inevitable, unless you know how to resist it with a counter strategy. Fortunately, there is a counter strategy. It is called the Thrive Cycle. At the heart of the Thrive Cycle is the habit of doing what you are best at when you are at your best. For me, doing what I am best at when I am at my best has been the lever that moved my world. It generated all the productivity I shared with you in the last chapter and more. But better than that, it has resulted in a deeper, lasting peace. That peace comes from knowing that if I can just do what I am best at when I am at my best for a good chunk of each day, my effectiveness soars. Work is far better, and my home life has a quality and joy that was missing for too many years. The way to be at your best is to focus your time, leverage your energy, and realize your priorities. When those three things work in sync, you move into the Thrive Cycle, a virtuous loop that will carry you far more effectively through the days and decades ahead. Once you start to master the patterns, principles, and strategies in the Thrive Cycle, dreams get acted on, hope is no longer deferred, and a lot more gets accomplished in less time. The strategies in the Thrive Cycle are essentially the opposite of the approaches in the stress spiral. Sometimes the key to success really is to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. That is true when it comes to your personal habits, rhythms, and disciplines. This is just a brief overview of the Thrive Cycle, because that is what we are going to spend the rest of the audiobook exploring in detail and applying in real-life ways. First, focused time. Rather than spending your time randomly in the Thrive Cycle, you focus your time through several approaches. The first refocus involves an attitude shift in how you think about time. The big surprise? You actually have the time to do anything you want to do. We'll explore that truth soon. The biggest shift takes place when you realize that you have only a limited number of highly productive hours in a day. Some hours will produce better results for you than others, and focusing your time means you will treat those hours differently. Through that, you will discover much higher levels of productivity than you are used to. Those limited hours during which you are at your best compose something you will soon come to call your green zone. Focusing your time will help you get more accomplished in less time. Second, leveraged energy. The real power of the Thrive Cycle happens here, when you learn how to leverage your energy levels that wax and wane over the course of the day. By default, most people compete with their energy levels, trying to push through low ebbs or even denying that they are struggling in a given moment. Rather than competing with your energy levels, you will learn to cooperate with them. Leveraging your energy will lead you into the heart of peak productivity, which comes from using your green zone hours every day to do what you are best at when you are at your best. Having accomplished your most important work during your green zone, you are then free to do other things as your energy dips to other zones, your yellow zone and your red zone. As you might guess from the colors, these are the zones where your energy is somewhere between average and, well, dismal. And as you will learn, that is perfectly fine and very natural. Most people concentrate on managing their time, but never think about managing their energy. But leveraging your energy is where you start to see exponential results. Third, realized priorities. Until now, everything has been fun theory. But this is where the strategies that will help you realize your priorities come in. You will learn a number of tactics, tips, and tricks that will help you eliminate distractions, learn how to say no, figure out how to handle the complexities of change and growth, and protect your green zone every day so you can accomplish more in less time. At the heart of this is your calendar. To make everything work together seamlessly, you will start approaching your calendar in a very different way. Adding the discipline of calendaring your energy zones, priorities, and key relationships will move everything you have learned from intention to reality. As a result, rather than allowing other people, interruptions, and the noise of everyday life to sabotage your priorities, you will accomplish them. That is the big picture. We will come back to these basic concepts again and again, and by the time you have finished listening, all this will feel like a set of shortcuts to a much less stressful life. There's a simple maxim that summarizes everything. The mantra I adopted is so simple, you might be tempted to dismiss it, but it is one that has guided me now for years, and I hope can guide you. Live in a way today that will help you thrive tomorrow. When I get all the components of the Thrive cycle working together, that is what happens. This mantra is also the antithesis of how most people in the stress spiral navigate their lives. The stress spiral mantra may as well be, live in a way today that will make you struggle tomorrow. Living in a way today that will help you thrive tomorrow will also become a little scorecard that gives you instant feedback on how sustainable your current pace is. If you are not thriving, it will remind you to adjust things, and you will have the toolkit to do that. To really thrive does not mean you are succeeding in just one part of your life. It means you are thriving in all of it. Driven people often excuse having terrible personal lives because they are winning at work. For too long, I bought that lie. I do not anymore. Winning at work while losing at home means you are losing, period. As you apply this maxim, do not just think about work or tasks. Thriving should encompass all of life. Think people, think soul, think purpose. The Thrive cycle will introduce or reintroduce you to the part of life that matters most, a meaningful existence. I regularly evaluate whether I'm thriving in 5 key areas of my life: spiritual, relational, emotional, financial, and physical. Whenever I do that, what results is margin and greater health in all 5 aspects of life. Remember margin? Margin is space. It is room to breathe. Margin is so rare in our culture, with every spare minute taken up with something. Technology has not helped us much in this respect. Margin is what you experienced when you were a kid, and your 6-week summer break felt the way a year or a decade feels today. It is what you had when you were so bored, and your mom told you to find something to entertain yourself until dinner, but you rolled your eyes at how that felt like forever from now. Margin is the leftovers, the extra, the grace. Yeah, I know, it has been a while. As you master the concepts ahead and think holistically, you will start to create margin in your calendar. You will have energy left over at the end of the workday, and you will have a new system that means other people do not crowd your decision-making. If you are a person of faith, as I am, that will mean time to develop your spirituality through prayer, meditation, reflection, and community. Creating margin allows you to take time for yourself. You will take the time to get to know yourself better and work through your stuff. Self-awareness and emotional intelligence are some of the greatest predictors of success in leadership and in life, after all. Most people never find the time to grow personally, and that is a shame. Thriving means better self-care, getting a good night's sleep, maybe taking naps, eating healthier meals, and heading to the gym or going out for a run more regularly. You will find space to nurture life-giving relationships again. Finally, thriving means creating margin in your finances too. Often the reason people struggle financially is they do not devote the time they need to really come to grips with their situation. Margin has less to do with income than it does with healthy habits. I promise you that living with it is far better. One of my favorite things about the kind of margin that comes from living in a way today that will help me thrive tomorrow is that it makes me nicer. Get me on a slammed day, and it is so easy for me to snap at you. Get me when I feel like I have a wealth of time, and I will smile, pull up a chair, and invite you to hang out. I am the most kind when I have the most margin. So, I will guess, are you? So will every day be perfect? You may ask, will we spend every Tuesday afternoon in hammocks sipping cold drinks? Okay, that is a complete lie. No, every day will not be perfect. Just ask my wife, my kids, my staff, my friends. The challenge is that life is not static, and I am far from faultless. You can do everything we talk about, finally get time, energy, and priorities working for you, master your new Thrive calendar, crush your goals, and 2 months later hit a snag. Your organization grew again. You moved into a new house. Or maybe because you are human like me, you forgot the strategy for a while and slipped back into old habits. Life changes every day. But the good news is that everything you will learn here can be reworked for your new reality. Got a new job? You can adjust. Got a promotion? You will figure out how to thrive again. Later in the audiobook, I have a full chapter on how to recalibrate when life throws you curveballs. Every day is not perfect, but the trajectory is forward and upward. The Thrive cycle has led thousands of people into far more productive and effective lives with meaningfully reduced stress levels. That is what it has done for me since 2006. That was a long time ago, yet using the strategy you're about to learn, I have stayed out of burnout ever since, and I have been able to greatly increase my capacity while reducing the hours I work. I get way more done in far less time, and I get the most important things done. What you will discover is that when you adopt the strategy as a framework, it can scale up or down with you. It flexes. That is why it has worked for CEOs of 8-figure companies and for college students trying to pass their final exams. It has kept me sane, breathing, and thriving. I have a pretty sweet promise for you. When you start doing what you are best at, when you are at your best, there's a solid chance you can gain 3 productive hours each day. That is right. 3 hours daily. When you extrapolate that, it gets liberating quickly. 3 productive hours a day equals over 1,000 reclaimed hours over the course of a year. Imagine what you could do with the 1,000 hours you get back over the next year and the years that follow. Personally, you could tuck your kids into bed at night, actually take weekends off, develop a hobby, read more, or buff up like you have been meaning to. Most people I have led through the strategy free up a minimum of 3 hours a week. Some really do free up 3 hours a day. The latter has been my story. I cannot wait until we get to the Thrive calendar, where I will teach you how to schedule time for what you really want to do in life. With all these advantages in mind, and a solid, proven strategy ahead, let me ask, are you tired of telling the people you love most to wait while you try to hack your way through your daily to-do list, or while you make just one more call? Maybe you want to not only stay married, but actually enjoy your relationship again. Now that you understand how you and I got into the stress spiral and why most people stay stuck there, it is time to escape, this time in a really positive direction. If you are ready to exit the stress spiral, let us go. It is time to start learning the strategies and rhythms that will help you thrive. To do that, let us begin with focusing your time. Chapter 3, you actually do have the time, 2 critical mental shifts about time. Let's take a short trip back to when I was stuck in the stress spiral and felt like I never had the time to do what I needed to get done. See whether any of this sounds familiar. I am in my office. It is a scattered day like the other days that week. I'm trying to write the 40-minute talk I have to deliver that weekend. Being the pastor of a church is one of the few jobs in the world that require writing a new 40-minute talk every 7 days. That is enough of a challenge in itself. But suddenly it is hitting me that for a message to really connect, it has to be compelling, profound, theologically deep, accessible to new people, original, faithful, and if you want to engage people, funny and oh so charming too. So, no pressure. Plus, I have been at this for over a decade. People know all my stories and all my jokes. I am not nearly finished. Meanwhile, the creative team is waiting on my input to finish planning the weekend services. All day there has been a line of people asking for 5 minutes of my time, which of course is never 5 minutes. I am preparing for a board meeting the next evening and a staff retreat the following week. And I have been playing whack-a-mole with my inbox. Answer one email, and before I can hit send, 2 more pop up. It is now past 6 in the evening. I have got the car keys in my hand, ready to head home because I am already late for dinner when my phone rings. I look at the phone screen. It is Rich, a member of my leadership team. I realize that if I do not take this call now, I will have to put it on the ever-growing list of things I need to do tomorrow, which is supposed to be a day off. I pick up the phone. "Hey, Carey, I need your help on this project I'm working on," he says. I love Rich, but on this day, his request feels like the match that is going to light my internal powder keg. I put just enough empathy in my voice to not be completely rude, but tell him, as much as I'd love to, I just don't have the time. Sorry. A civil response, I think, given the short fuse inside me. Little do I realize that will be one of the last times I ever say those words. On my way home, I am trying to not think about my highly ineffective day. Instead, my mind goes to a little book I have been listening to about how the President of the United States spends his time. A friend told me it would be an interesting listen, and although I think it was written for 8th graders, it has been a fun little audiobook on everything from how meals are served in the White House to the daily briefing and how the Secret Service works. As I get within a few blocks of home, a realization hits me hard enough to make me want to stop the car. The President of the United States has exactly as many hours in a day as you do, Carey. No more, no less. That thought induces a deep panic in me. How can you try to keep the economy afloat, hold a nation together, manage a nuclear arsenal, and work toward world peace, or at least stability, in just 24 hours a day? Then this realization, I would be a disastrous president. I chew on this for a while, a long while. That insight calls me out like few other insights ever have. The truth is, you are richer than you think. On any given day, I have precisely the same amount of time as any other person on planet Earth. And so, my friend, do you. When it comes to time, you and I are rich. In fact, we are loaded. Time does not discriminate. With the two exceptions of the day you are born and the day you die, everyone gets exactly the same amount of time every day. Think about the reverberations in your life. If the organization you are a part of grows to 10 times its current size, you will not get a single extra hour to handle more stress. If you double the size of your family overnight, nobody is going to hand you an 8th day of the week to help you cope. If you become CEO of a Fortune 50 company, the universe will not give you a minute more to deal with the pressure. The most productive people on Earth get the same amount of time you and I get, which also means some people are staggeringly great at handling time. And me, well, there was room for improvement. A lot of room. Rather than wallowing in self-pity forever, I started rethinking what happened earlier that day. I actually did have the time to help Rich. I just did not take it. I had the time to research my talk and write it. I definitely could have emptied my inbox and tackled a few other things on my to-do list. I had all the time anyone else did. Instead, I was so consumed by the requests coming at me, so distracted by the infinite sea of information that is available to anyone online, and so rattled by regular interruptions that I squandered the day. My time scattered in a million directions. I was so unfocused. I kept falling into the trap we all fall into, spending the most time on what matters least and the least time on what matters most. I never intended to do that. It is just that is almost always what happens. And my excuse, I just do not have the time for that. Well, that started to sound lamer and lamer. It simply was not true. I had the time, I just did not take it. I was time rich, but I felt like I was broke. What follows is more than just a time management strategy. In some ways, prior to embracing the Thrive cycle, I had already become a student of time management. I had listened to audiobooks, attended seminars, downloaded apps, and studied productivity. But the reality I kept bumping up against was the same problem you face. The opportunities available to a capable person always exceed the time available. Get around driven people, and you quickly realize many people also have more ambition than they have capacity. Maybe that describes you. Traditional time management makes you more efficient, but it does not make you more effective over the long run. Efficiency fails because there is a fundamental limit, a wall you hit, in time management when all you are trying to do is to become more efficient. The limit is this: you are managing a fixed commodity, which is why time management usually leaves you feeling drained, not energized. You are managing a growing list of demands with a limited asset. Time does not grow. It will not expand, which is why time management brings you diminishing returns. People think money is a limited commodity. Well, yes, but not more limited than time. You can always make more money. You can never make more time. To make matters more frustrating, once you become highly efficient, time management becomes demotivating because you have to settle for small, sometimes microscopic improvements. Meanwhile, the opportunities you have or the responsibilities you carry continue to expand. Then what do? In this chapter, we will explore two critical mental shifts. Changing how you focus time begins with changing how you think about time. The first mental shift is to tell the truth about time. That day in the office was for real, one of the last times I ever let myself say, I don't have the time. Eliminating that statement and others like it forced me to tell the truth about time. Listen to yourself and to the people around you to see how often you either say or hear statements like this. Sorry, I just don't have the time. I didn't have a chance to get it done. I wasn't able to finish it. I just can't. I wish I could, it's impossible. Do you hear what those statements have in common? Well, they are not entirely true. You could have, you just did not. Coming to terms with the truthfulness of how I thought and spoke about time was one of the hardest things I have had to do in my adult life. Getting dead honest about my time took away my excuses. And I loved my excuses. But you know what excuses do? They kill hopes, dreams, and goals. Eliminate the excuses and you start to move forward, because you can make excuses or you can make progress, but you cannot make both. So start by telling yourself the truth. Take a few minutes and repeat after me. I had the time. I did not take it. I had a chance to get it done. I did not do it. I was able to finish it. I just did not. I could, but I am choosing not to. It is not impossible. I am just not making the time. I am opting to not meet. I am deciding to not work out. I am choosing to not go to the school play. And there, you admitted it. To yourself. I realize that is a pretty brutal level of honesty, but truth can be such a good friend. After all the lies we tell, the lies we tell ourselves are most deadly. I do not know how to state how revolutionary telling the truth about time has been for me. So the first step to focusing your time is to start telling the truth about time. Stop saying you do not have the time. Start admitting you did not make the time. So far, this has been an interesting little mental exercise, but you and I need to make this work in everyday life. What does that look like? A quick word to the wise and socially adept. When you start admitting you did not make the time to do something, it is probably best to reserve this truth for your internal dialogue. Telling people, I'm not going to make time for you, is an easy way to ruin your social life fast. Instead, keep this kind of statement as a part of your dialogue with yourself when you are asked to give some of your time. But notice the power in telling yourself the truth. When your mom invites you to lunch and you decide not to make time for her 4 weeks in a row, well, that tells you something. Lying to yourself about not having the time lets you off the hook. Telling yourself the truth will bump you into a rather sad reality. Your mom is not a priority. At least you know what you are dealing with then. In a similar way, it is a good idea to adjust your explanations when you inevitably miss deadlines. I used to say things like, I didn't have a chance to get to it. These days I say things like, I'm really sorry. I didn't make the time to complete the project. That's my bad. Let's talk about how I can turn that around. If you model this at work and at home, the attitudinal and verbal shifts involved in telling the truth about time can change the culture in a healthy way. So here's the promise. It is okay to start dreaming again. At the end of this chapter, I will challenge you to make a list of the things you have always wished you had more time for. When you start thinking about each request or opportunity with the understanding that you actually do have time for it, you will sift through your priorities far more intentionally. Here are just a few examples. You have the time to work out. You have the time for a date night with your spouse. You have the time to write a book. You have the time to clean the garage. You have the time to pray and connect with God. You have the time to tuck your kids into bed at night after hearing a story. You have the time to thoughtfully change careers. You have as much time as anyone else to do those things. You have the time. The only question is whether you take it. This truth changes even little things, things like your resentment level. Before I made this shift, in a particularly busy season, I went for a ride on my road bike, pedaling hard while trying to squeeze in some exercise before my late afternoon meeting. My mind was racing as I rode that sunny afternoon, trying to figure out how I was going to juggle everything on my plate. As I rode through my neighborhood, I noticed two middle-aged guys sitting on a front porch, beverages in hand, chatting about whatever was on their minds. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they looked completely relaxed. Unlike me, they were totally enjoying the day. You know what thought went through my head? How on earth could two guys in the prime of their lives be sitting on a front porch on a beautiful day, enjoying themselves, when I am so miserable while working so hard trying to get it all done? I used to throw a lot of pity parties, but here's what I realize now. I have the time to sit on my front porch too. I can relax anytime I want, watching the world pass me by. And if I am not doing that, it is because I chose not to do it and instead opted for something I felt was more valuable in that moment. See the shift? A second mental shift about time will help you adjust your mental map for the habits and strategies in the rest of the Thrive cycle. Now that you are telling yourself the truth, it is time to shift your overall goal. Mental shift 2 is to embrace passion and abandon balance. There's a decent chance that at some point you decided to make living a balanced life your goal. Maybe you did it at New Year's, or when you endured another grinding week and said, "I've just got to find more balance," under your breath. I'm going to suggest you do what I did. Abandon balance as a goal. This is far more liberating than you might think. Balance appears to be quite unreachable as a goal for most of us. Many people say they want it, but in an age when so much is coming at us at once, and opportunity abounds, and buzzing devices threaten to overtake even the quietest moments, most people never find the balance they dream of. Much more significantly, though, balance in our culture appears to have morphed into a retreat rather than an advance. When you listen to what people who are seeking balance tend to say, they often speak of wanting less work, fewer commitments, or less effort. It is hard to build a meaningful life if you are constantly in retreat. I have noticed that when someone announces he or she has achieved a balanced life, I rarely find myself wanting to emulate that person. I have goals and I do not want to retreat for the rest of my life, do you? I want to accomplish something meaningful in my time here. Conversely, think for a moment about people who accomplish significant things. Would you call them balanced people? For the most part, no. Most people who accomplish significant things are not balanced people. They are passionate people. Balanced people do off well, but being off is not of much use if you have things you want to do that require you to be on. It is true that some passionate people have lives you may not want to fully emulate. Steve Jobs' monomaniacal passion may not be worth fully embracing, in the same way that Elon Musk's obsessive hours may not be a life goal. Both titans really struggled relationally. I run my desire to live a passionate life through my key spiritual, emotional, relational, physical, and even financial filters. Thriving is about more than making a dent in the universe while abandoning all the people around you to do so. No, I want to choose my passions carefully and simply decide to embrace them fully. Which is why my wife and I schedule a weekly date night we almost never break. Which is why these days when my kids are around, I want to give them my full focus. When we are throwing a dinner party, I want to be there, engaged with our friends and family. And when I am writing a book, podcasting, speaking, or launching a venture, I want to pursue it fervently. My guess is you are fascinated by passionate people, whether famous passionate people or the coach you had in high school who breathed football or gymnastics and would not quit until he or she saw your potential realized. As much as passionate entrepreneurs and leaders fascinate me, passion is not just a work thing. Passion is what makes people hike a 14er, decide to parent well, deepen their commitment to their spouse, coach Little League, or take on a social issue and fight for justice. Balanced people do not change the world. Passionate people do. So, what if you embraced everything you chose to do, not with resignation, indifference, or weariness, but with passion? What would be different at work, at home, with your kids, with your faith, with your neighbors and best friends, if you dove into everything you chose to do with passion? If you're going to take a break, take it. Enjoy it. If you're shooting for 8 hours of rest, sleep deeply. Want to take a nap? Enjoy yourself. Do not feel guilty. Embrace it. Got a big project you're going to tackle at work? Throw your heart into it. The key to living passionately is to focus your time on what is truly most important to you and to choose to do those things wholeheartedly, with enthusiasm. Stress makes you skim. Weariness wears you out, and when you have nothing left to give, it is too easy to coast. Embracing passion also means you will have to limit the things you decide to do. Thriving calls for a wholehearted embrace, not of more, but of less, done well, of a few highly focused priorities you are passionate about. As one author said, I can do anything but not everything. Which means the best strategy is to focus your time on the things and people that matter most. When you allow something into your calendar and life, make it a new goal to pursue it passionately. So you never have enough time for what? Now that you know you have the time for what matters most, because you realize your time bank account is loaded, we are going to get hyper-practical. I want you to write down what matters most to you. Make a list of 3 to 5 tasks, projects, or people you wish you had more time for. Then, write down approximately how much time each week you would like to devote to each goal in hours per week. Doing that is going to be key, because then the rest of the audiobook will not seem like an academic theory. You will have an end in mind. Some ways your life will actually be different and better. In the next chapter, you will learn how to identify your most valuable hours in the day so you can accomplish what you are about to write down. So start writing. Dream a little. What and who will become a new or renewed part of your life as you move forward? After all, you have got as much time as anyone else does to passionately pursue what matters. And if you free up between 3 hours a week and 3 hours a day in newly productive hours, you will be able to turn some of your desires into reality. Chapter 4. Find your green zone. How to uncover when you're at your best. I have this problem, or as my sometimes sleep-challenged wife might say, this gift. I can fall asleep almost anywhere, anytime, including highly inappropriate times. Just ask my staff. A few years ago, I was interviewing a prospective hire. According to my operations manager, who was with me for the interview, I dozed off while I was conducting the interview. She has never let me live it down. In my defense, I was at a restaurant in Scranton, and it was almost midnight. I had also spoken at an event earlier that evening after a 7-hour drive. And not to throw shade on my colleague, but I might question her ability to accurately assess someone else's state of fullness after 11 p.m. Still, point taken. You probably should not fall asleep while conducting job interviews. I could not focus. I could barely stay awake. The problem? The time of day, or lack of day in my case. I am far from my best at night. Swing by a dinner party at my place for further evidence. My conversation will be less than scintillating after 9 o'clock. Which leads us to a helpful truth. Your energy waxes and wanes over your waking hours. Time feels different at different stages during the day. At some point in your life, you probably slotted yourself into one of the 2 great categories of human beings who walk this planet, early bird or night owl. Some people are comatose in the morning. Others, like me, struggle to stay awake after the sun sets. One author did a fantastic study of how people perform at different times of the day. He found that about 14% of people are morning people, 21% are night owls, and 65% of us are somewhere in the middle. While knowing whether you are a morning person or night owl can help, what if leveraging your time could result in far more productivity? You are not always at your best. Even though you have 24 equal hours in the day, not all hours feel equal. You are wide awake for the 10 a.m. meeting, but at 2:30 that afternoon, you have got toothpicks wedged in your eyelids to stay alert for the conference call. You sprint through some hours and drag yourself through others. If you think about that reality, it becomes even more alarming. As I got better at focusing my time post-burnout and monitoring how I was really doing, I noticed I have only 3 to 5 hours a day when I'm truly at my best. Alert, alive, focused, flowing with good ideas, and feeling like I'm at my peak. No matter how hard I tried or how rested I was deeply productive for only a 3 to 5 hour window. At first, that observation made me feel like a fraud. If I get paid for full-time work and put in 8 or more hours a day, how can I have only 3 to 5 peak hours in a day? Then I started diving deeper. After doing more research and testing this theory with other leaders I have trained, guess what? Most people have only 3 to 5 deeply productive hours in a day when their energy is at its peak. That is it. Claire Diaz-Ortiz, who worked at Twitter in the startup years, made a similar observation. Even the most brilliant Silicon Valley engineers have about 3 creative and highly productive hours in them daily. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, has researched this quite extensively and argued that our capacity for intense, focused work comes in at around 4 hours a day. So this appears to be a universal phenomenon, affecting even doctors, nurses, and surgeons. Friend to friend, if you ever have to go for surgery, ask for the 9 a.m. appointment, not the 3 p.m. slot. Anesthesiologists have an adverse event about 1% of the time at 9 a.m. At 4 p.m., the rate rises to over 4%. You are over 4 times more likely to have a problem in the afternoon procedure than if they work on you in the morning. The culprit? Researchers point to the physician's circadian rhythms that make focusing harder in the afternoon. Similarly, studies of colonoscopy accuracy show that doctors detect polyps at a lower rate as the day progresses. Every hour produces a 5% reduction in detection. The reality of having 3 to 5 peak productive hours each day really resonates with the leaders I have trained over the last few years as well. Outside of one person who told me she thought she had 6 highly productive hours a day, the rest of us appear to confirm the 3 to 5 hour observation. What do you do with this rather sobering reality? It's time to find your green zone. As we saw in Chapter 2, you can cooperate with natural timing or compete with it. It's going to be way more fun and less deadly if you cooperate with it. The first step is to uncover when that 3 to 5 hour window when you are at your best happens for you. That is your green zone, something you will come to value, protect, and leverage. As I started to pay more attention to when I did my best work, it did not take long to recognize that I am normally pretty sharp between 7 and 11 a.m. I notice my stamina typically dips in the late morning before lunch. To offset the dip in energy and focus, I often take a short nap after lunch. For me, taking a nap is like plugging my phone back in. I may not get back to 100%, but even 15 minutes can refuel me to 85% for a while. After a nap, I'm usually better for an hour or two, but as the afternoon wears on, my energy level typically drops again, and by 4 p.m. it is hard to focus on any important tasks. After dinner, my energy surges a little again, but once 9 rolls around most days, I am pretty much done. Your day will follow patterns too. Those patterns will be different from mine, but the point is that they are probably quite consistent. They repeat almost daily. Eventually, I noticed my patterns were so predictable that I could put them on a clock. You can too. Let's call it the energy clock, a clock that details when your energy peaks and dips. The hours and patterns will vary, but the principle prevails. Your day has peak energy periods, mid-energy hours, and some bleak moments. Mapping it on a clock makes it easy to see what a typical day looks like for you. On this clock, the green zones represent high energy, the yellow zones reflect mid-level energy, and the red zone plots low energy. Any idea when your best 3 to 5 hours in the day are? When you are at your worst? When you are in the middle? There is no right answer here. The important thing is to find your answer. Later in this chapter, you can get access to a template to create your own personal energy clock. But first, I will explain a little more context. Tracking both your productivity and your mood is the key to figuring out your personal zones. While we all have good days and bad days, your green zone hours are generally characterized by a combination of high productivity and good spirits, a flow that marks both your output and your state of mind. Observing how you repeatedly behave will lead you to categorize the hours that make it into your energy clock. Naturally, there will be variations each day, depending on how much sleep you got the night before, how much stress you are feeling, or if you have some unusual things planned. But overall, you will see that your energy rises and falls in predictable patterns. So does your mood. You can evaluate your productivity by looking at the quality and flow of your ideas when brainstorming, writing, or creating anything. Look at your focus. Are you highly focused, distracted, moderately zoned in? What about your ability to generate helpful ideas? How well you lead or contribute to meetings? How long it takes you to clear an inbox? How insightful and helpful you are in your interactions? How quickly you move things off your task list? When it comes to tracking your mood, you will also notice ebbs and flows over the course of the day. As you track your mood, pay attention to how you interact with your colleagues at work, how you engage your family at home, how you feel about your job, your spirits, your self-talk, and the way you interact with strangers. I have found it helpful to not just pay attention to my own impressions, but also get input from others. Often other people see things about you that you will miss, like your mood, for example. So be sure to ask them. To help you identify each zone in your life, here are some working definitions of the 3 zones and what you are looking to find in each. First, the green zone, high energy. The green zone is when your energy is high, your mind is clear, your focus is sharp, and you find it easy to think and to imagine, to contribute and to create. Your mindset is fresh and positive. You have the physical energy for work and for life. When you are in your high energy zone, you have enthusiasm for the tasks ahead. You are focused and strong enough to tackle them well. To put it simply, your green zone is those handful of hours a day when you are at your best. Next, the red zone, low energy. Contrast how you feel in your green zone with a window when your energy is low. When you have low energy, you struggle to pay attention. You zone out easily, you have a hard time following what is going on, and you might not even be listening in meetings. Not only do you struggle to produce your best work, but sometimes when your energy is low, you struggle to produce any meaningful work. In a low-energy window, you have to force yourself to work out or prep dinner. Bottom line, you just do not have the energy for it. Recognize your red zone? Sadly, we all have one. I promise you, if you do not recognize your red zone, your colleagues and family probably do. Just ask them when you are usually irritable and unhelpful. They know. Finally, the yellow zone, mid-energy. The middle ground is what we will call the yellow zone. When you are in the yellow zone, you are neither at your best nor at your worst. You are in the middle. You are fine in meetings. You can produce content or plan ahead, even if it is not your best effort. You can plug away at chores both at work and at home, but you feel neither deeply focused and alert nor terrible. Your work tends to be in the middle too, good but not remarkable. Your yellow zone is not a wasteland. It is a place where a lot of good things can and will get done, just not your best things. So, when are you at your best? Now that you have noted the characteristics of each zone, take some time over the next few days or even weeks to finesse your personal energy clock. Plotting out your personal energy clock is important because it is the key to helping you discover when you are at your best. While this is not a universal rule, I have found that the younger you are, the more time it takes to figure out the specific windows. That is not surprising. When you are in your 20s, you have a pretty strong overall energy level. Also, self-awareness often grows as you age, so if you are young, this may be the first time you have even considered the issue. Regardless of your age, you are about to give yourself a serious advantage by going through this exercise. Now is the time to figure out your personal zones and plot them out on your personal energy clock. You can download a free customizable energy clock at atyourbesttoday.com. A few notes. Do not get too bogged down in details. Broad blocks of hours are fine. Also, do not worry about being 100% accurate. Like everything you will learn in the Thrive cycle, your energy clock can be adjusted. You are going to come back to your green zone again and again in this audiobook. If you do not really know what it is, you will not leverage the ideas as much as you could. Unapplied strategies do nothing to change your life. So, spend some time now plotting out your energy clock. You will be glad you did. Before we move into how to use your green zone, let me show you how not to use it. Before I realized I had a green zone or figured out what to do with it, I did what most people do with their best energy and hours. I spent them unthinkingly and randomly. Before I developed the green zone concept, on some days I would use my best hours exercising. On other days I would write. Still other days I would do meetings or run early morning errands. I was also the king of breakfast meetings. After all, I was going to eat, so why not make that time productive? While I sincerely loved my breakfast meetings, my most important work, writing talks and strategic planning, waited until I got back to the office. By the time I got ready, drove to the restaurant, had the meeting, grabbed coffee on the way back, got to the office, got bombarded by what I missed, and then finally turned my mind to my most important work, it would be after 10 a.m. and I'd already be tired. My most productive window of the day was gone, and my most important work remained untouched. I have also worked with some otherwise very smart people who use their green zone to push through a list of the things they hate most. They will take their prime hours to address a clogged inbox, submit their expense report, or organize their files. That is great if your job is to answer email or file expenses, but most of these leaders are doing those jobs only to get them out of the way, and they waste some of their best hours doing so. Sound familiar? You already know that if you want to be at your best, things are going to have to change. So if you do not want to waste your precious green zone, what do you do when all you really have is 3 to 5 peak hours a day? Resign? Admit to your boss that you are a fake? Moving to a 3-hour workday might sound awesome, but most of us get paid to show up for a little longer than that. You still have another 20-ish hours left on the clock, hours you need to spend on other things. Which raises some great questions. What do you do in your red zone when you are slumping at your desk after a heavy carb lunch? What about your yellow zone, when you are not quite as sharp as in your green zone, but not exactly one of the walking dead yet? What about your inbox? All those calls you have to make, your family, hobbies? What you do is leverage your energy, or lack of it. Do not fight the patterns, fuel them. Use each zone to its maximum advantage, and yes, despite its apparent lack of promise, even your red zone can be used strategically. We will explore all that and more in the next couple of chapters. Chapter 5, Do What You're Best At, Investing Your Energy for the Highest Returns. Making the right investments with your time and energy can produce some astounding returns, like making the right financial investments does. On that point, let's play a game. Imagine you have 10 different stocks in your retirement fund. Let's also imagine that 2 of the 10 stocks happen to be producing 80% of the return you have been getting. For 5 years, these stocks have consistently produced 80% of the growth of your investments. Your investment advisor affirms how these stocks are solid investments moving forward. You have $1,000 to invest today. What would you do? One option is to ignore the data you have just seen and put $100 into each of the 10 stocks. Personally, I would put 100% of my money into the 2 stocks that are producing most of the results. To sum it up, given what you know, putting $100 into each of the 10 stocks just does not make sense, does it? Here is the point. While most people would not invest their money unthinkingly, so many people do invest their time and energy unthinkingly. Investing your highest yield activities in your green zone can produce tremendous returns. While you have 24 equal hours in a day, not all hours feel equal or produce equally. Leveraging your energy is where the exponential returns begin. Doing your best work while you have your best energy significantly boosts the quality of your work, the quantity of your work, and even your mood. By now, I trust you have sketched out the first version of your energy clock and have a sense of what your green zone is. You also have a decent sense of your yellow and red zones. We will come back to your yellow and red zones in the next chapter, but now we are going to drill down on the best use of your green zone, because that is where most of the power is. Now that you know when you're at your best, let us crack the code on the other important factor. What exactly are you best at? I realize that sounds like a simple question, but not everyone can answer it accurately. It is probably true that the older you are, the more aware you are of your strengths and weaknesses. But I have also discovered after 25 years in senior leadership that I am still refining my understanding of what I am best at. Every time I do that and get it right, the yield increases. To be sure, there is something inside all of us that wants to be great at everything, but that is not me. Put me on the spot, and with little prep, I can deliver a stirring vision talk that can motivate people to action. But ask me to fix the brakes on your car, and let's hope your insurance is paid up. Most of us have a narrow range of things we excel at. While your gifting is probably narrower than you hoped it would be, do not worry. A narrow gifting can be a superpower. There are other factors to consider when figuring out what the best use of your green zone is. Factors like passion and impact. Gifting plus passion plus impact equals your optimal green zone focus. Let's break that down one component at a time, beginning with your gifting. Your gifting is your sweet spot, what you uniquely do best. Those are the things that others find difficult but you make look easy, the things for which you have natural aptitude. Your gifting is different from your skill set. Skills are things you can learn, like woodworking or project management, or deeper developments of your natural gifting, like a talented singer who takes voice lessons. Skill development can get you far. For now, though, focus on gifting. Gifting is a much more natural or raw level of talent than a skill set is. Here's how gifting works. I had always wanted to play guitar when I was a kid. With 3 years of hard work, I learned to play the first 2 minutes of a Journey song. Eventually, I put my guitar away. That is, until I was 36. That is the year my wife and I decided to get our 10-year-old son, Jordan, an electric guitar for Christmas. Jordan had been in music lessons since he was a kindergartner and has natural musical talent. As his dad, I thought this would be my chance to learn guitar with him. We were starting from almost the same place. I thought we could learn in tandem. My brilliant idea of father and son learning together and becoming guitar heroes together lasted 8 minutes. Jordan is musically gifted. I am not. No amount of skill can really make up for a lack of natural talent. My son went on to play not only keys and guitar, but drums and bass too. Me, I continue to listen to Journey. One clue to your gifting is that something that seems effortless to you is difficult or complex for others. To find your gifting, ask yourself and people close to you these questions. What seems effortless to me that seems difficult or complex to others? What talent do I keep using in different settings? What do other people affirm in me as my gifting and talent? Next, let's look at passion. Your passion is what you love to do. In the same way that not all hours are created equal, not all tasks are created equal. You love some things you do, and you loathe some things you do. That is normal. You are probably passionate about the things you are gifted at, but passion can extend beyond gifting. The key to finding your passion is to look for things that give you energy. In other words, there are a handful of things you do that you find not only enjoyable, but also energizing. Your passion can be almost anything. It might be strategic planning, team development, organization, editing, administration, design, or teaching. In your personal life, it might be running, cooking, art, or time with friends or family. You feel like you simply have to do it. Pay attention to the things that fuel you. To identify your passion, ask yourself these questions. What tasks do I most look forward to doing? What things energize me as I do them? When do I lose track of time because I am enjoying what I am doing so much? Finally, let's consider impact. The best way to use your green zone is to leverage it for the biggest impact. Impact refers to those things that, when done, will make the biggest difference, sometimes in the moment, but often long-term. So how do you determine impact? Ask yourself what the highest value tasks are that your employer pays you to accomplish. What are your core responsibilities? What are your overriding goals? Instinctively, you sense that there are a few things that, when done, will move the needle more than other things. So the question becomes, how can you leverage your gifting and passion to make progress on these most important things during your green zone hours? When it comes to determining what has the greatest impact personally, you can begin with this question. What am I trying to accomplish with my life, my family, my faith? I realize this is a huge question, but it's important to keep in focus. Then figure out what you need to do to move closer to your goals in the moment. To find what is most important, ask yourself these questions. What can I do today that will have a significantly positive impact? What few things, when done well, will help me move the cause forward? What activities, when I repeatedly do them, help me make meaningful progress? So there it is. Gifting plus passion plus impact equals optimal green zone focus. You can download a cheat sheet to help you assess what you're best at from atyourbesttoday.com. As you answer the questions related to these three areas and use your green zone accordingly, you will leverage the power of doing what you are best at when you are at your best. Here is how an optimal green zone comes together. Let's say you are a software engineer who is working on an app that goes to market in 2 months. You are charged with overseeing the user interface. As you move into the home stretch, you realize the best use of your green zone is to do 3 things. First, do some final market research on how the interface is expected to evolve. Second, spend time poring over the feedback from beta users to make sure you catch glitches. And third, set aside the rest of your green zone for 2 meetings to gather feedback and set the next objectives. When you think about it, that is a pretty fair day's work. You have other meetings and activities that you will tackle in your yellow and red zones, but if that is all you got accomplished for the day, that is a pretty good day. You will be shocked at how often that happens when you optimize your green zone. Now, to flip to your personal life for a moment. Let's imagine a Saturday when you have yard work, kids' homework, and a much-needed connection with your spouse before everyone heads to an afternoon football game. Again, let's imagine that your green zone happens in the morning and that your spouse values quality time. Having breakfast with her at a favorite coffee shop gives you 2 hours of uninterrupted time. When you get home, you spend half an hour with the kids on their homework and then cut the grass when you are not at your best. You grab a quick nap and then head off to the football game. Most people let days happen to them, which results in disappointment, tension, and important things left undone. By leveraging your green zone, you can make sure that does not happen to you. We left the issue of skill behind a few pages ago. Let's pick it up again, because this is where it really gets fun. If you want to see your green zone used to its maximum potential, do not just think about what gifts you can use in your green zone, but think about the ones you can develop. Malcolm Gladwell explained how world-class performers develop their gifts in his book Outliers, where he popularized what is known as the 10,000-hour rule. Gladwell argued that becoming world-class at something is a combination of raw gifting and putting in 10,000 hours working on that craft. This means that if you are going to really develop your gift, you practice when everyone else is off playing. It means working on communication, not just to get your next talk done, but to study the craft of speaking and writing more deeply. Gifted people who put in 10,000 hours of practice and development are far more likely to become top of their field. There is only one problem I have with developing my gift and my green zone. Naturally, I do the opposite of what Gladwell argued you should do. Back to my life as a communicator. I have an ability to make something up on the spot, and while that sounds like a great ability, it has a dark side. Here's my problem. I can still do that, which is exactly the problem. The more naturally gifted you are at something, the easier it is to spend less time on it, not more. Why? Because you can do a good job without even trying. Far too often in my life, I have done just that. I whipped something together because I got overwhelmed with so many other things. I threw a talk together in a quarter of the time I should have taken to do it well, and often nobody noticed. That is a terrible way to steward a gift. It is also a really bad long-term strategy if you want to fully develop your talent. The tyranny of the everyday usually gets in the way of developing your gift into a high-level skill set. Physicians who spend all day seeing patients can end up doing the bare minimum of continuing education. Teachers and professors, overwhelmed by course loads, stop listening in the fields that used to fascinate them. Spending 30 minutes of your green zone each day, listening, studying, and honing your skills can make an astonishing difference. But of course, most of us do not naturally live that way. When the stress spiral sucks you in and you squeeze your most important work into the leftover space of your life, you cheat your gift. You cheat your gift when you use it, but never take the time to develop it. And when you do that, you cheat the world out of your best too. When you use your gift but never develop it, everybody loses. You lose because you never realize your potential. Your company loses because they never get to fully leverage your potential. You lose in a third way because you end up wasting the best hours of your day on things that do not really matter and that drain you. Finally, working outside of your gifting on a consistent basis is so demotivating it can slide you into burnout. Instead, imagine using your most productive hours to develop your gift, not just use it, to really study and improve it until you become the best you can be at what you do. A highly developed skill set is what distinguishes the pros from everyone else. And because you are doing something that as a rule you love to do, those hours become synergistic. You end up more energized, not less. So, do the opposite of what most of us naturally do. Instead of pushing your most important work into your yellow and red zones, do what you are best at when you are at your best. That is your green zone. When you leverage it, my guess is it will become the most treasured hours of your day, whether you are at work or at home. Chapter 6, Yellow Zone, Red Zone, and Other Real-Life Problems. How to leverage non-optimal times and situations. Having spent your peak hours doing what you are best at, you might be asking, what about all the other hours? Great question. While we are at it, let me name something else you may be wondering about. Maybe you're thinking something like this. Carey, this is awesome for you. But unlike me, you are the boss. I do not have that kind of freedom at work. And besides, I have preschoolers. What about me? If you are asking questions like that, awesome. In this chapter, we will explore what to do with your yellow and red zones, and then clear up a few important questions about the circumstances that create energy challenges. So, if you are ready to look at the rest of your day and deal with common questions and objections, let us dive in. We will start with your yellow and red zones, those non-optimal times you get every day that constitute the majority of your day. What do you do with those zones? On the days when you have optimized your green zone, you will be surprised at how productive and accomplished you feel. When your most important work is completed or well underway, it gives you a freedom you never enjoy otherwise, because the massive, important tasks that usually dangle in front of you into your evening hours are done. That takes a huge amount of pressure off the rest of the day, and as a result, everything else will feel less urgent and less important. But most days, your to-do list cannot be completed during your green zone, and there are hours yet to be put in. So, what do you do? Simple. Match the remaining tasks to your remaining energy zones. Let's start with your yellow zone. Because your yellow zone consists of those hours when you have a moderate amount of energy, use those hours to do moderately important tasks. I often hold meetings in my yellow zone. Sometimes the most critical connections make it into my green zone, but because producing quality content and clarifying strategy are some of my most important tasks, I rarely use my green zone for meetings. Yellow does just fine. During my yellow zone, I also work on calendar management with my staff and make decisions on what we will do in the weeks and months ahead. I am also a podcaster, and as important as my podcast is, I will do most interviews in my yellow zone because I have enough energy to complete the task well. Now your red zone. All of this leads us to your red zone, that time of day when you are running on your 3 remaining brain cells. Save your least important tasks for your red zone. You might argue against that, thinking, well, won't I botch them? Maybe. But if you are going to do a less than ideal job on some tasks, why not do it on the tasks that matter least, not the tasks that matter most? I use my low energy zones to clear email, hold the lower stakes meetings, do routine administrative work, and increasingly, exercise. Years ago, I exercised in the morning. Since I was not training for a national cycling team, I realized using my peak hours to work out was probably a bad idea for me. These days, I usually do my workouts between 4 and 6 p.m., my red zone. Even though I am tired while getting my gear on, a 60 to 90-minute bike ride will completely reboot and re-energize my system. And it beats staring at a blinking cursor or falling asleep at my keyboard. The biggest red zone mistake you can make is to leave important decisions or critical tasks for this zone. On more than a few occasions, I have made decisions in my red zone, only to ask my assistant, 2 weeks later, who on earth made this boneheaded call. She then graciously reminded me it was me. Using your red zone to compose an email that is going out to the entire organization is a superb way to set yourself up for a classic typo. Or try tackling conflict when you are exhausted. That always goes well. You will make optimal decisions in your green zone and good to great decisions in your yellow zone. But in your red zone, well, just do not tackle anything that really counts unless you have other people around to triple check your work. So now you have got a sense of how to use all three zones well. Before we leave this section and move on to realizing your priorities, there are 3 real-world challenges worth addressing. Challenge 1. I do not have control over my work calendar. People often tell me the reason they cannot use their 3 zones the way they want is because they are not in control of their work calendar. It is a fair concern. Most employees do not get to call the shots the way senior leaders do. That said, it is way too soon to throw in the towel. You have more control over your calendar and life than you think. It does not feel that way because our minds instinctively gravitate to the things outside our control. A much better approach is to flip that, to focus on what you can control, not on what you cannot. And there is a surprising amount you can control. Think about your week mathematically. Every week has 168 hours in it, and a typical work week takes up about 40. That means that you have complete control over 128 hours, which in turn means that only 24% of the hours you will spend in a given week are committed. That gives you 76% control. Let's break down a 40-hour work week even further. Most office workers discover that meetings and other stated obligations usually amount to about 10 to 20 hours a week. Most people I've worked with are shocked to discover that there are usually only 10 to 12 hours of meetings or appointments they have to be in every week. If your total is about the same, this means the majority of even your work hours are probably within your control. You and your time are far less controlled by other people than you think. The real question becomes, so how much better can you do with the hours you do control? While work may feel like it takes up all your life, you have remarkable freedom beyond it. You have 100% discretion over how you spend your non-working hours. Of course, you might argue that the kids have sports and music lessons, and there are meals to make and laundry to do, friends to see, not to mention sleep. All absolutely true. But realize that is all your choice. This is the life you built. I hope this audiobook is helping you design a life you do not want to escape from. Coming to terms with how much freedom you actually have is part of that. Challenge 2. I am not the CEO. Another challenge the majority of people face at work is that they are not the CEO. I agree that being the senior leader gives you a built-in advantage, but having been a senior leader for decades now, I promise you that the position also comes with a unique set of stressors that almost offset the freedom you get. What do you do when you do not get to run the place and call the shots? First, you have already seen that you probably have more freedom than you think. Next, look for any flex in your calendar where you can do what you are best at when you are at your best. Do your most important work when your energy is high and shift all the low-importance activities to the red zone. If that means you have to come in early as a morning person or stay late if you are a night owl, most bosses do not object. Begin by shifting what you can, and then as you notice improvements, have a conversation with your boss to see whether other things could be changed. Perhaps you could move one of your meetings from weekly to bi-weekly or reduce a 90-minute meeting to 1 hour. Sometimes it might be appropriate to ask to no longer attend a specific standing meeting. Shifting the times of meetings or commitments can also be helpful. Let's say you discover your weekly one-on-one with your supervisor is during a red zone. You could explain to him or her that you have been working to become more effective at work and that you learned this is generally the time of day when you have the least energy. Asking to move the meeting might be well received. A few principles to follow when approaching your boss. First, express desires, not demands. Second, ask questions instead of making statements. And third, make sure you have done everything you can do. You want to have maximized the factors within your control before you ask your leader about something beyond your control. A final word on this. Unless you have a completely irrational boss, your influence with your employer is highly dependent on the results you get for him or her. Be spectacularly good at what you do, and you might be surprised at how eager your employer is to make changes to accommodate you. And remember, these changes are going to benefit your boss and your company as well. Challenge 3. I have got young kids or a difficult family situation. The final challenge that people run into happens when their home life is not as stable or predictable as they wish it were. What if you have young kids or a newborn? Or what if you are caring for aging parents or dealing with chronic health challenges in your family? In those cases, is this advice just a pipe dream? It is important that you adjust your expectations of what you can accomplish to your season of life. While there are some successful authors, podcasters, and speakers who have young kids at home, it might not be realistic or wise for you to set enormous goals for yourself if your free time is regularly spoken for. That is okay. Having a great family life and a strong marriage is an excellent goal. The advice in this audiobook is not just for people who want to launch something big. It is for people who want to do something meaningful and intentional with their lives. To get out of the stress spiral and live a fulfilling, healthy life while you care for others is a wonderful goal. One person told me that given the special needs of his daughter, he felt like his whole life was a yellow zone. I empathize with that. Circumstances and even your own health can shrink your green zone and expand other zones for a season or chronically. Life comes at us in seasons and often with challenges we never asked for. But I hope the principles in this audiobook can be adjusted to help you make the best of the situations you are dealing with. I put these principles into practice when both of my sons were teenagers, and it transformed those years for me. Around the time of my burnout, my son Jordan, who was then in 9th grade, asked me, "Dad, why can't you be like normal dads?" I asked him what he meant. He said, normal dads are just around. They're not working all the time. They just hang out. They have time. That is pretty good motivation to change your ways. So I canceled all my evening meetings for the next month and decided to be around. The next day, as we finished dinner, I asked Jordan, "Hey, son, what do you want to do tonight?" "I'm around." He replied, "Nothing, Dad. I'm going out with friends, teenagers." You know what I learned in that moment, though? Being around is no guarantee that anything relationally significant will happen, but not being around is an absolute guarantee that nothing relationally significant will happen. For the rest of his high school years, I was around a lot more as I put these principles into place. Same with my younger son. I delayed some of my hopes and dreams for work because my deepest hopes and dreams were at home with my family. I did not really start speaking on the road until I was 40. I did not publish my first book until I was 44. I launched my podcast when I was 49, and I did not start traveling as widely as I do now until we became empty nesters. I promise you, if you stay relatively healthy, there is a lot of life ahead of you after the kids leave home. If your situation is young kids or teenagers who need your love and attention, adjust your expectations and play the long game. It always pays off. When all else fails, focus on this. I hope you find those adjustments and qualifications helpful. I get off course too. It is easy to howl at the moon and blame everyone and everything, and sometimes I still do that. But in my more sober moments, I will come back to this one principle. Focus on what you can control, not on what you cannot. There is so much within our control, from our bedtime to our attitude to what we eat and drink to the sequence with which we tackle our work. You have more control than you think. So do I. Mindset matters. As Henry Ford is quoted as saying, whether you believe you can do a thing or not, you're right. Now that you've got a handle on your green, red, and yellow zones, you can create a simple list to categorize the tasks you need to tackle according to how much they energize you or drain you. You can download a template for this at @yourbesttoday.com. Once you have completed this exercise, we will turn our attention to something that threatens to sabotage the days of even the most intentional leaders: hijacked priorities. Chapter 7, Hijacked: Why It's So Easy to Fall Perpetually Behind. Ever have one of those days you get excited about because there's nothing scheduled? No meetings, no video calls, nothing but white space. I love those unscheduled days too. It is exciting. You can finally work for 3 undistracted hours on your research project, or listen to a book that you have been meaning to start, or get deep into the numbers to produce the kind of analysis you know you are capable of. You can think, breathe, imagine, dream. And have you ever come to the end of one of those days only to discover that the entire day disintegrated? All you know is that your optimal day of hyperproductivity blew up in your face. You did not get anything done that you thought you would. The only thing you accomplished was to fall further behind. Let's break down why that happens and why it keeps happening. To do that, we will deconstruct one of my bad days as a leader and writer. I start early because I want to get some good writing hours in before most people have breakfast. I head to my office before the sun rises, and first up on my writing list is a new article for my website, which also happens to mean I am on the internet, which leads to having a few tabs open that have nothing to do with anything I am working on, which leads me to YouTube, where I watch a review of a laptop I want to buy to, ironically, make me more productive. As I glance at the browser tabs, I notice some unread emails. Turns out I missed a small fire that broke out last night on a project, so I try to put that out via email and then refocus. Back to my article. As I scan the few words I have written, I remember I have not finished my research, so I Google some stats. As I type the insights into the post, 2 friends text me. Gotta reply to Frank, I always do. Which reminds me I have not posted to my social media accounts yet. As I scroll, people start arriving in the office, which of course is perfectly fine. I had set aside 2 more hours for writing, but they are not aware of that. So add some chit-chat to the mix. Sarah knocks on my door after 9 o'clock and asks whether I have 5 minutes. I say I do, even though I do not feel like I do. And of course, 5 minutes becomes more than 5 minutes. 23 minutes later, I refocus, write for a bit, check email again, and answer 3 more texts. A few more people ask for my time and input, and I am invited to an impromptu early afternoon meeting. Then I notice I'm hungry. It is lunchtime. The meeting after lunch starts on time. I had budgeted an hour, but it runs late. After it is over, Justin asks me whether he can pick my brain on a project he is working on. 1 hour morphs into 2 hours plus. I am tired, so I duck out for a few minutes to grab a coffee and go for a short walk. I am intercepted by a few more people as I meander back to my office. As I sit down, I see 17 new emails. I dive into my inbox, and Sarah comes back with an update. I plod through the emails and fresh texts, make a phone call, then go back to my original blog post, only to notice it is now 4:17 p.m. Sound familiar? Welcome to almost every workday ever. What happened on that day is my priorities got hijacked, just like yours do. And because we live in the real world, even when you embrace and master the Thrive cycle, the human race, human nature, and gravity itself will conspire against you every day to steal your productivity. It is easy to blame everyone and everything else for my lack of productivity. But these days I remind myself that everyone who calls, texts, knocks on my door, and asks me for things is just doing what every human being does, trying to move his or her priorities onto my agenda. That is just the way life works. Nobody will ever ask you to accomplish your top priorities. They will only ask you to accomplish theirs. Think about it. Every text, every email, every random phone call, every knock on your door, every meeting you get invited to, every request you get puts other people's priorities on your calendar. Your friend is looking for advice, your coworker has a question, your neighbor needs help moving a desk up the stairs, and your toddler throws a temper tantrum. None of this is on your to-do list. 100% of a workday or day off can be used up helping other people accomplish their priorities, while yours sit unattended. Before you get mad at the world for this, just realize that is exactly what you do too. Most of the time when you interact with other people, you are attempting to hijack their priorities so you can accomplish yours. And the opposite phenomenon never happens. When was the last time someone texted or emailed you asking whether you had enough time to get your most important priorities accomplished that day? Or canceled a meeting just so you could breathe a little? Correct, never. What has made all this more complicated than it used to be is that you now carry a device in your pocket that gives the world access to you 24/7. Recently, when I was feeling particularly overwhelmed by the incessant number of requests coming my way, I counted something I had never counted before, my inboxes. I have 11. Yeah, I know. That is ridiculous. It is also true. I have a few email addresses, but somebody decided that every social media platform should also have its own inbox, and signed me up for that. Someone else at some very large tech company invented message requests. That way, someone who is not connected directly with me on social media can send me a request to send me a message. Just one more fun little stream of inbound communication to deal with. My guess is you have more inboxes than you think too. Count them. They help explain your paralysis. There are so many ways to get a hold of you digitally, and so many ways to get distracted, that peace remains elusive. If you look at it honestly, the "oh my goodness, what happened to my day" phenomenon you and I experience is not really a mystery. You simply spent your day reacting to everything that came your way. That is exactly how your priorities get hijacked. That is how you work all day and accomplish nothing, or at least nothing you plan to do. It is why the most important things you are tasked with are the very things that do not get done. It is also why you are so exhausted and overwhelmed. You can get time and energy working in your favor, but unless you get priorities working in your favor too, all you have is a fun new rhythm and a nifty theory that remains theoretical. To overcome the perpetual hijacking, you need a strategy, which is what we will explore in detail next. Your priorities get hijacked in 3 significant ways: by tasks you did not prioritize strategically, by your own tendency to get distracted, and of course, by people. We will devote a chapter to each of these challenges. Let us start with prioritizing the right tasks. On a typical day, the wrong things eat up most of your attention. Stephen Covey has helpfully pointed out the distinction between things that are urgent and things that are important. Covey pointed out that some things are neither urgent nor important. That wormhole you went down on YouTube is a good example. Social media, gaming, chit-chat in the office, and random texts and phone calls make life interesting, but they do not help you accomplish your goals. Continuing with Covey's categories, some things are urgent but not important. A random knock on your door, that friend from high school who texted you about nothing in particular but still wants a reply, or the meeting that is on the calendar but accomplishes little. This category includes everything that feels urgent but ultimately does not matter much. Next, Covey said, are the things that are truly urgent and important, like putting out a kitchen fire, for example, or preparing for a court hearing tomorrow, taking a call from your boss, or hitting the deadline for your annual meeting. Finally, Covey said there are the things that are important but not urgent. This is the category that drives most of your frustration and regret. Important but not urgent priorities include exercise, goal setting, developing your gift, personal financial planning, listening to audiobooks, spiritual development, emotional health, playtime with your kids, or even a date night with your spouse. It is so easy to let any or all of these things slide. What makes it more complicated is that you never pay an immediate price for skipping important but non-urgent things. The cost is always long-term. Worse, the price only gets steeper the longer you ignore them. You pay now, or you pay way more later. So let us get brutally honest for a moment. If you really had to audit your days, how much of what you spend your time on is neither urgent nor important? All this stuff that was not on your list got done. The real value, your best work, your greatest contribution, got squashed, ignored, deferred, or squeezed in. Almost all the things left undone are important but not urgent. The wrong things will always want your attention. It is your job to focus on the right things. The question, of course, is, how do you do that? 3 things can help you start making real progress. Think of these as meta shifts that will reorient how you think about priorities. First, narrow your focus. When everything either seems important or presents itself as important, how do you know what really matters most? Years ago, an Italian engineer named Vilfredo Pareto observed that 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. Applied to your time use and mine, the principle would suggest that most people spend 80% of their time on the things that produce 20% of their results, which we would all agree is probably a bad idea. If you really want to see exponential spikes in productivity and results, flip it. The goal, then, becomes to spend 80% of your time on the 20% of activities and tasks that produce 80% of your results. As the founder of a leadership company, I have realized that our team and the leaders we serve have the most success when I focus on 5 things: casting crystal clear vision, creating and delivering great content, crafting a healthy organizational culture, keeping our top staff and clients aligned and relationally connected, and ensuring we have the financial resources we need for our mission. As any leader knows, there are about 86 other things I could spend my time on, but these 5 produce the greatest results. This has become a filter for me to use to sift through all the requests that come my way. In your personal life, you can also find a few things that move the needle more than anything else. Before my kids went to college, being at home for dinner, attending their events, going on a weekly date with my wife, and spending evenings home and around made for the best results. Now that I am an empty nester, I prioritize having at least one sit-down meal and lingering conversation every day with my wife, traveling together, and doing activities we love together. Personally, a full night's sleep, regular exercise, and starting my day before sunrise with an hour of prayer, scripture, and reflection make the biggest difference. What I have outlined is basically what I now spend 80% of my work time and personal time doing. Notice that, for the most part, these important priorities are not urgent. I could skip almost all of them, and few people would complain. But these are the things that give my life and leadership meaning, purpose, and sustainability. So my question to you is, what are the 20% of things you do that produce 80% of the results? This is a critical question to answer because it will help you further refine how you should spend your green zone time. When you spend 80 or 100% of your green zone on the things that produce 80% of your results, your ability to accomplish significant things soars. Next, master the art of the clear no. The strategy we have covered so far will compel you to say the one thing most of us really dislike saying, no. So many people I know are people pleasers, and that is my leaning too. Without a strategy for saying no, you default to yes, and your life vaporizes with other people's priorities being realized rather than yours. Without a strategy for saying no, you default to yes. You know that saying no to good things allows you to say yes to great things, but you cave again and say yes to a stupid meeting, which causes you to show up way too late to your son's football game. As Steve Jobs famously noted, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. Why are we so afraid of saying no? You're probably afraid of disappointing people, coming off like a jerk, or both. So let me give you in a few pages something that took me years to develop and get good at, a clear, simple strategy for how to say no nicely. First, tell them you would love to meet with them. That is probably the truth. In a perfect world, you likely would love to meet with them. Second, express empathy. Empathy diffuses tension. Let them know you understand where they are coming from. Third, be firm. Even when you express it with kindness, make sure your answer is direct. Let them know that as much as you would love to meet, you are not going to. Saying no sounds like this. In order to honor my other commitments, I'm going to decline. As much as I'd love to, I'm afraid I'm not in. I'm so sorry, that's not going to work. I'm not available. Thank you, but I'm going to pass. What unites all these variations is they are all clear. There is no false hope. It is just no. None of us can do it all. Remind yourself that you cannot prioritize the people who matter most to you if you say yes to everyone else. Fourth, redirect them. Maybe you cannot help them, but someone else might be able to. If there is someone better suited to help them, send them there. Fifth, thank them. Even though you say no to the requests, honor the relationships. Let them know how much you appreciate them simply for asking. I recently experienced a great example of a firm no that felt just fine when I asked a friend who leads a large organization to be a speaker at an event. He called me and said, "I'm going to say no to this one, but I appreciate you asking me." He explained why and then affirmed he would like to do something in the future. When I finally hung up, as much as I would have appreciated a yes, the no did not sting at all. I respected him more for it. See, you do not have to be a creep. You can still be friends. When you are tempted to cave, remind yourself that because time is a limited commodity, saying yes to something good now will lead you to say no to something great later. If you are still a little uncomfortable with saying no, you are not alone. I have a free download for you with several text, email, and verbal scripts you can use at yourBestToday.com. Finally, let's talk about making categorical decisions. If mastering the art of saying no seems appealing, wait until you master categorical decision-making. Categorical decision-making is making one decision that eliminates dozens or hundreds of other decisions. Strangely and tragically, the fastest introduction to categorical decision-making for all of us happened in March 2020, when the world shut down because of the coronavirus pandemic. People will remember for decades what they were doing as the world stopped. So much of what was normal life for all of us disappeared overnight. All kinds of things that had been options suddenly were not. For years prior to COVID-19, my team and I had debated how much I should be on the road speaking at events. The week the world shut down, I was scheduled to speak at SXSW in Austin, Texas, followed almost immediately by a 5-city speaking tour of Australia. Within a matter of hours, the questions over whether to go disappeared when SXSW canceled its 2020 event and governments around the world closed their borders. For me, it was not just 2 speaking trips that were canceled. A year of speaking events disappeared or switched to virtual. Talk about categorical decision-making. A whole category of activity in my life closed instantly. When you think about the categories of things that disappeared from your life overnight, it reminds you that you have the power to radically redefine what you do and what you do not do. That is the power of categorical decision-making. Removing entire categories of things from your calendar and life to liberate your priorities is a wonderful voluntary practice. The typical response to being overwhelmed is to try to cut something out of your calendar temporarily. While this provides a bit of relief, the challenge with this kind of approach is that it provides a temporary solution to a more systemic problem. Categorical decision-making eliminates groups of people or things from your calendar and life. Here are some practical examples of categorical decisions you can make. Eliminate particular kinds of meetings. For example, stop doing breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, meetings over 1 hour, evening meetings, or weekend meetings. No longer allow people to meet for no reason or simply to pick your brain. Pick 1 to 3 charities you support generously, which makes saying no to all other requests automatic. On the personal front, decide which kinds of invitations you accept and which you do not. This automates your decision-making not just for you, but also for your team or family. You have pre-decided what you will do and will not do. Deciding what you will not do ahead of time will free you to do what you want to do in the moment. It becomes so much easier to eliminate overwhelm when you have categories you have simply eliminated. But you are afraid of missing out. The greatest fear you will likely encounter with this step is the fear of missing out. What if you miss out on an amazing opportunity? If something that you feel you should say yes to comes along, say yes. Because you have already eliminated 99 things that would not have been the best use of your time in that category, you can say yes to the one or two things that are the exceptions to the rule. You do not have to be elitist either. I believe one mark of great leadership is to help people who probably cannot help you back. So take the time to do that for no other reason than it is the right thing to do. The point is, you can be strategic about your decisions to be charitable with your time and energy. You cannot have your calendar filled with non-priorities if you want to accomplish what you are most called to accomplish. Categorical decision-making saves mental energy and a tremendous amount of time because you already made the decision. Case closed. Move on. When you decide what you will not do, it frees up time and energy to fulfill your purpose. So fear not. Your next hijacker is you. We covered a lot in this chapter. These three shifts, narrowing your focus, mastering the art of saying no, and making categorical decisions, are the first part of the strategy to stop the hijacking of your priorities. But before you declare the hostage taking over, there are two other areas to focus on to truly liberate your priorities. The next hijacker is, well, you. Chapter 8, Distraction Free: How to Stop Interrupting Yourself. How often do you think you touch your phone in a day? Fun fact, one study shows that average people touch their smartphones 2,617 times a day. Let that sink in for a minute. That is 2,617 times a day. And those are average users. Heavy users touch their phones over 5,400 times a day. I am now officially averting my eyes in shame. I am a recovering heavy user. Think for a minute about the implication of living with that level of distraction and interruption from technology. It is staggering. To wrap your brain around it, imagine that the notifications on your phone, instead of being buzzes or dings, came from a human who rang your front doorbell. Every time there is a message, there is a dude at your front door instead. So you are working away and the doorbell rings. You get up, walk down the stairs, and open the door. The human text messenger says, "What do you want for lunch?" Annoyed, you tell him, "A turkey avocado ciabatta sandwich, please." You thank him, close the door, and head back toward the stairs. The doorbell rings again. You roll your eyes, spin around, and swing it open. Mayo? And so it continues all day. If notifications on your phone were human beings, that is exactly what your life would be like. It is funny how we would never accept that many interruptions from people. That is why they issue restraining orders. But somehow we tolerate it with technology. When technology runs us, it can ruin us. Technology makes a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. In this chapter, we will explore how to combat the distractions that come at you when you are trying to work productively. Our devices are one thing, but if you are like me, you do not even really need an enemy to interrupt you. You have one. It is a perpetually distracted you. I can interrupt myself and get off track all by myself. You do not need an enemy to interrupt you. You have one. It is a perpetually distracted you. As one author pointed out, the opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction is traction, which comes from a Latin word meaning to draw or pull, like a tractor pulls things forward. To put it simply, the reason you do not have traction on the goals and priorities you have set for yourself is that you often get distracted. Pay attention. Distraction is expensive. That truth is reflected in the expression we use when we try to get someone refocused. Pay attention. We live in the era of the attention economy, a concept developed by Nobel laureate Herbert Simon to describe the competition for our attention. All day long, companies and people vie for your attention, from sensationalist news headlines to the algorithms that online media companies design to keep you engaged longer. Every time you give your attention to something or someone, it costs you. Invested well, attention can pay big dividends, from a family that is close-knit to a book that changes your life to a breakthrough idea. However, much of your attention and mind gets captured by things that really do not matter. Paying attention to the wrong things costs you. It costs you your priorities, your goals, your productivity, your health, It can even cost you your family. Let it wander long enough, and eventually it costs you your potential and your dreams. Researchers have discovered that it takes the average person almost 25 minutes to refocus after a single distraction. 25 minutes every time someone asks you, Mayo? If you have ever said, "Now where was I?" you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes you get those ideas back, sometimes you do not. As author Cal Newport argued, the ability to do deep work in our distracted culture is both increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. So how do you guard your attention? Particularly when you're in your green zone, where deep work pays off most. Further optimizing your green zone has an awful lot to do with where you spend your green zone. Let's discuss your best environment. We have covered what to do to optimize your productivity and when to do it. Now it is time to tackle where you do it. In the same way that not all hours are created equal, not all environments are created equal. Some of my best friends love working in coffee shops. I just cannot produce anything of quality in that environment. The best thing you can do to discover your optimal environment is to become a student of yourself. Begin with this question: where do you produce your best work? We humans are like plants when it comes to our productivity. We need the right ecosystem to help us thrive. A cactus flourishes in a hot, arid climate. That climate would kill a petunia. What are your ideal conditions? Can you access them as often as possible during your best 3 to 5 hours a day? My favorite place for focused work is on my porch at home. Any idea what your ideal space might be? A corner of a spare bedroom? A nook at the end of a hallway? I know one leader who converted his garage to his sacred space to do deep work. Quiet space for deep work matters. To generate activity takes little thought, but to distill meaning, discern purpose, connect ideas, spot trends, or solve problems, that requires careful thought and ample time. Everything that interrupts you and distracts you competes with that. The place where you work matters. So, here is my plea, regardless of your personality type. Find or create the most undistracted environment you can for your green zone. Feel free to take radical measures and even appear antisocial. Your focus matters that much. Mark Twain did his writing in a cabin on his property so he could be completely undistracted for hours at a time. His family used a horn to let him know that meals were ready, so deep was his concentration. You may not have access to a writer's cabin, but you do need to focus deeply and for sustained periods to produce the best work you are capable of, whether that is a breakthrough idea, an innovative strategy, a killer report, or a finished manuscript. What if you cannot get optimal? Thanks for hanging in there while I painted an ideal picture. But I get it. You and I live in the real world. Your neighbor might start mowing her lawn just as your best idea is dawning on you. Or you might have to go to work every day and sit in your assigned cubicle. So, does that mean you just cannot optimize your green zone? No. Optimal conditions are a goal, not a requirement. If you are waiting for perfect conditions to do your best work, you will wait forever. Because of the typical level of travel in my life, I often kiss my porch and basement retreat goodbye. I have had to learn to adapt to hotel rooms, lobbies, airports, and planes, where noise-canceling headphones have become my best friend. By the way, headphones are a fantastic idea for productivity, even when you are working in your cubicle. You do not have to listen to anything. Just having them on emits the almost universal signal of, "Dude, don't bug me." Some leaders put signs on their doors or traffic cones on their desks to indicate that they are not available right now. Healthy colleagues respect boundaries like that. Maximizing your green zone with an optimal work environment requires constant innovation and flexing. You will not be able to optimize your green zone every day. I do not. Do not beat yourself up. When you run into surprises and obstacles, focus on what you can control, not on what you cannot. Renowned writer Vladimir Nabokov did not let circumstances limit his output. When his tiny flat did not have room for a desk, he decided to write in the bathtub. If Nabokov could pen novels next to a toilet, you and I can probably find some arrangement that works too. So what kind of environment can you find to cultivate your best work? Get focused deeply enough to produce your best work. Spend as much green zone time in optimal conditions as possible. And when you cannot, simply do your best. Just know this. When you do what you are best at, when you are at your best in the best conditions you can create, your work comes alive. And so do you. Next, turn off all notifications. Wherever you spend your green zone, you will still experience interruptions. Most will be digital. One of the best ways to protect your green zone is to turn off all notifications on all your devices. Almost everything in the digital universe will try to convince you to keep those notifications on. Instead, give them your attention on your schedule, not theirs. Notifications push you to do the opposite. Access content on their schedules, not yours. It takes only a few minutes to disable all notifications on your phone, tablet, and computer. Those few minutes will save you literally days or weeks in productivity each year. I also set all my devices to Do Not Disturb. That means virtually nothing gets through while I am working or when I am off. I can imagine that at this point you're thinking, but I will miss all my texts and other important notices. And the answer to that is correct. That is the point. You can program some people to break through your Do Not Disturb wall, and I do that for family, close team members, and my best friends. If my wife or kids call, they get through. They usually text, so if they call, I know it is exceptionally urgent. While shutting the world off for a few hours can create a small panic inside you, try it. Start with one day and see what happens. Here's what I imagine you will discover. You have not totally disabled communication. All those messages you missed are still there waiting for you when you are ready to engage them. You really have not missed a thing. All you have done is decided to control when you reply. Still worried about missing really important stuff? If it truly is an emergency, the police or fire department will knock at your door and let you know. Until then, enjoy the free headspace and productivity that come with the quiet. Most things that present themselves as urgent are not urgent. Also, take a walk. Now that you have found your best 3 to 5 hours and you are in the best environment for deep work and your notifications are off, what do? You might think you should power through your to-do list until there is nothing left. But if you're going to develop your gift, not just use it, and work on your business, not just in your business, the best idea is to harness the mind-body connection. The quality of your work is determined by the quality of your thinking, and high-quality thinking is incompatible with constant output. On a regular basis during your green zone, give yourself time to breathe. Get up from your chair while you ponder ideas. Research, reflect, work through a few versions, dream, consult, and then tackle it again. And do not be afraid to really relax and block space. Neuroscience increasingly shows that physical activity like walking or running allows the subconscious mind to generate better ideas. This is why you have some of your best ideas in the shower. It is when your mind is not intentionally engaged that your subconscious spits out the solution to the problem you were trying to solve 2 days before. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs was famous for his walks. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who also walked every day, wrote that only thoughts which come from walking have any value. So, in your green zone, as necessary, walk, run, ride, and wander to generate ideas and see what happens. You will be surprised. Finally, let's talk about early mornings. One more killer advantage. You know your green zone hours, but before we leave the subject of distraction and focus, I need to ask a question that always annoys non-morning people. Do morning people have an advantage over everyone else? My answer? I think they do. My bias for mornings comes in part from my current wiring as an early riser, but also from a conviction that early mornings carry an advantage no other time of day does. The rest of the world is still asleep. While you should still turn off all notifications no matter when your green zone lands on the clock, the reality is between 5 and 8 a.m., nobody is going to text you. The world is hushed, and the rush of the workday and school day has not started. Early mornings can be especially productive, not because you do not notice the distractions, but because those distractions are not there in the first place. This means you can get things done faster and better because focusing becomes so much easier. It is a bit like traffic. If you live in the country and have to drive 30 miles to work, you end up with a 30-minute commute. If you live in Los Angeles, traveling 30 miles to work is more like a 90-minute drive. The only difference is the number of other people trying to do the same thing at the same time. When the world is loud and everyone is trying to do what you are trying to do, it is just that much harder to focus, and most people make far less progress. Leveraging the hours before the world gets moving can be a serious advantage. Whether you wake up early or not, if you really want to thrive during the day and make every zone better, make sure you get enough sleep. I realize I sound like your mom, but it is becoming clear that sleep is a secret weapon. I have prioritized rest post-burnout in a way I never did before my crash, and I am shocked at how much better I routinely feel. Pro athletes are also realizing that rest is directly connected to their ability to perform at peak levels. Early mornings have become a distinct advantage for me, but rest is even more significant to living in a way today that helps me thrive tomorrow. These strategies and others you develop will help produce a far less distracted you. A focused you is a better you. But there is one more challenge and opportunity when it comes to realizing your priorities: people. It is hard to keep yourself focused, but when other people enter the picture, it gets even more complicated. That is why the next chapter is all about how to handle this priority hijacker. Chapter 9. What about people? What to do when the wrong people want your attention and the right people don't. Growing up, I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house. Grandma was my main babysitter, a best friend, and like a second mother. Nobody could make homemade meatballs like hers. Grandma also had a hard time figuring out how to handle one particular friend, whom I will call Nancy. Nancy lived across town, but every morning at 10 o'clock, she would call Grandma to talk. In those pre-cell phone times, phones were big devices hung on the kitchen wall, with cords that stretched only so far. My grandmother appreciated those conversations, but not nearly as much as Nancy seemed to. Grandma was ready for a 15-minute chat. Nancy, it seems, was ready for endless conversation every day. As the phone rang, I would hear my grandmother say, "It's 10 o'clock, that must be Nancy," and pick up the phone. Then I would watch Grandma try to unsnare herself from the conversation. She'd say things like, "That's so interesting, Nancy. It's been nice talking to you." Or, "Well, that's great to hear, Nancy. I suppose I have to make soup for lunch soon." Or, "Well, look at the time." Nancy never picked up on the clues. Never. The fact that she had nothing to say did not change the fact that she took all morning to say it. Grandma would roll her eyes as Nancy talked on. Then she would move her hand in a circular motion as if to say, "Wrap it up." She would sit. Then she would stand. Then she would sigh. My favorite was when, after an hour or so, Grandma would enlist me. She would cup her hand over the phone and, in a barely audible whisper, say to me, "Go outside and call me. Pretend like you need me." So I would head out the back kitchen door, down the stairs, then turn around and yell, "Grandma! Can you help me?" And in her best surprised voice, Grandma would say, "Oh, Nancy, Carey needs me. Gotta go. Bye." And so ended the conversation. I loved being her nuclear option. My guess is you have probably got a Nancy or two in your life. Good people, but not exactly how you wanted to be spending your morning. Every morning. This brings us to the people problem. You have already realized that all the wrong things want your attention, and now you have strategies to combat that. But what about the most challenging interruption of all? People. What do you do with people like Nancy? People can be a wonderful investment for your green zone, but you also realize that sometimes people can completely waste it. Here is the truth. In the same way that all the wrong things want your attention, so do all the wrong people. I realize it is not polite to say that. Part of you is pushing back right now asking, "Wrong people? How can people be wrong? Doesn't everyone matter?" Everybody does matter, but you might admit, people tend to be the greatest opportunity and the greatest obstacle in your life. One CEO told me that allowing the wrong person into his green zone can reduce his peak energy from 5 hours to 5 minutes. When that bad meeting is over, the rest of the day becomes a red zone. Maybe you can relate. So, our beautiful theory about a well-guarded green zone works perfectly until another human being gets between you and your priorities. And if you are like me, you will just cave. The Nancys of the world are wonderful people, and there are definitely times for them, but left unchecked, the Nancy moments happen far too frequently for most of us. You should not just distance yourself. Humans have struggled with how to interact with one another since we started populating the planet. For millennia, people have relied on distance and differences between people to desensitize them to one another. Think about how you behave in the grocery store. You are bolder and ruder when you have a shopping cart in your hands than when you do not. Or think about how you conduct yourself in your car. Chances are you are naturally more aggressive there too. Remove the metal cages and stand face to face, and suddenly you are just human. It is hard to say no to people, even if you think you should. Distancing yourself from people or erecting hard barriers will diminish the quality of your life, not enrich it. It might be effective for getting people out of your personal space, but dehumanizing people is hardly the recipe for a quality life. So what is? Let us probe a little further into the mystery of human interaction. Here's a paradox you might recognize. The people who want your time are rarely the people who should have your time, and the people who should get most of your premium time rarely ask you for it. Keep that dynamic going, and the people who most drain you will be the people you spend most of your time with. And the people who most energize you, you will spend the least amount of time with them. Think about it. At work, your best team members, top salespeople, and best managers rarely, if ever, ask for your time. In your personal life, the people who often suffer most are the people closest to you, your spouse, kids, and best friends. Too often, you will ignore the people you care about most as you spend your time with people you care about less. If you recognize this dynamic, then ask this question: why do not I spend time with the people I most want to and need to spend time with? Often, you do not hang out with them because they are not particularly needy or demanding. The healthiest people rarely are. The people who most want to meet with you are rarely the people you most need to meet with. There are two categories of people you should be investing less time in. One is the people you feel you should meet with because things are not going well or they are in a crisis. The other is the people who want to meet with you but do not need to. Let's start with the people you feel you need to meet with but do not want to. Often the common denominator is that they either are in crisis or are underperforming. The employee who is always late, or the friend who is always moving from bad relationship to bad relationship. Your return on investment in this kind of encounter is usually quite low. Your motivational talk last month did not make enough of a difference, so you take a harder line this month, hoping that helps. But in all likelihood, you will be back at it with this person again next month. Despite your investment of time and energy, it never really gets better. Some people do not want to get better. They just want your time. It is not that you should have zero time for these people, but they should not take up your prime time when neither you nor they see any results. And even if they could use coaching, if your influence is not helping them, maybe you are not the one to assist them. I have found more than a few times that the best thing I can do is refer them to other people. It is not just better for me, but it is better for them. Now, what about the people who want to meet with you but do not need to? Some are great investments, some are not. Yet they will ask for your time, take away nothing from the meeting, and leave you feeling drained. Here's a short list of the kinds of people many of us find draining. Drama queens or kings, perpetually angry or bitter people, addicts who do not want help, chronic complainers, people who will not take responsibility for their lives, and people who have a lot of time on their hands and no purpose. The point here is not that we should avoid these people at all costs. Everyone needs a hand, and in some seasons I have been the draining person who needed people to build into me. But social workers, counselors, and first responders deal with needy people. In imbalanced relationships, you give, they receive. While that is appropriate in many cases, a steady diet of giving leaves you depleted. It just becomes exhausting for you to have a lot of draining people in your life, and when they occupy your green zone regularly, you will struggle to get anything done. If you spend most of your time with draining people, you will live much of your life feeling drained. So, guard your heart. While this might sound selfish, it is not. Self-care is not selfish. It gives you the energy you need to truly be present for other people. You can give only what you have got. And if you have got nothing left in the tank, you cannot help anybody. I meet so many leaders who have nothing left to give because they have given it all away to people who, honestly, were not helped by the interaction. Instead, invest in your best. When I first understood that I would naturally spend most of my time with the people I least needed to, I experienced a breakthrough moment. Just because people wanted to meet with me did not mean I needed to meet with them. So I applied the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, to relationships. Relationally speaking, the Pareto principle looks like this. Spend most of your time with the people who produce most of your results, and the least amount of time with the people who do not. In leadership, that typically means you should spend most of your time meeting with your top performers. In your personal life, spend 80% of your time with the people you care most about, leaving 20% for others. There are some real benefits to spending 80% of your time on your inner circle. To begin with, your top and closest people will be thrilled you did. Second, you will be energized when you spend time with them, as will they. Just as your meetings with non-performers were draining for both you and them, your meetings with your top people will be energizing for both of you. In addition, when you meet with your top people, they usually lean in even harder and produce better results. Healthy at the top, healthy at the bottom. Unhealthy at the top, unhealthy at the bottom. When you make these kinds of radical decisions, you end up with a lot more free time because you take all the time you used to spend on your low performers at work and spend it on your best people. And you take all the time you were spending on some of your not really friends and reinvest it in the people closest to you. That frees up not just time, but mental energy. How many friends can one human being have? Figuring out the right and wrong people to keep meeting with is one thing, but it also prompts this fascinating question. Exactly how many relationships do you think one human being can have? British anthropologist Robin Dunbar said that the maximum number of meaningful personal relationships most humans can cultivate is much smaller than you might assume. Dunbar argued that the number of relationships you can have is not just a matter of preference. Your limits are cognitive. They are hardwired. He broke down the limits of meaningful human relationships into a series of concentric circles. Starting at the center circle, Dunbar suggested that you and I are hardwired for 3 to 5 true friendships, intimate relationships with people whom you connect with at least once a week. You do not even need your other hand to count the number of intimate friendships a human can have. The next circle is the 12 to 15 people he calls your sympathy group, friends you connect with at least once a month who share your values and interests. Curiously, this is also the typical team size in most team sports, the number of members on a jury, and the number of apostles. The total of 20 relationships between these first 2 circles is about all the people most humans can manage to truly know. But wait, I know way more people than that, you're thinking. And you are right. You do know the names and bios of a larger group, but Dunbar maxed that number out at 150. Not 300, not 1,500, just 150. Why that number? Dunbar noted that the average size of ancient and medieval villages was about 150 people. We were wired to live in meaningful communities of about that size, and somehow that number still plays out in the world today. The 150-person network corresponds to everything from the number of friends you send Christmas cards to the need to abruptly shift management styles in an organization once it grows past 150 employees. When you think through how your life operates, you might find surprising resonance in what Dunbar observed. Chances are, your true inner circle is not more than 5, and you may well connect at least monthly with 12 to 15 people who form the circle you call friends. And beyond that, there are probably about 150 people you connect with from time to time. Dunbar's point is that these are fixed numbers. When someone new moves into your inmost circle of 3 to 5, he said, someone has to drop out to make room for that person. If you are not sure this actually happens, check how often you texted certain people over the last year and look at the last decade of pics you took on your birthday. Over time, close friendships come and go, but the number you can accommodate stays the same. It appears that you and I are designed to process only a limited number of meaningful relationships, which actually has some pretty staggering implications for how we live these days. Let's talk about friends, fans, and followers. As Dunbar noted back in 2010, it seems that the social networking sites have broken through the constraints of time and geography that limited people's social world. If that was true in 2010, it is even more true today. Even a quick check of your phone might show you that you have 754 friends on one social media channel, 192 followers on another, and 316 on a third, a historically unprecedented and rather unnatural number of people in your life. The struggle, then, is between design and desire. You were designed to handle between 3 and 150 in a meaningful way, but being a social creature and not wanting to upset people, your desire is to connect with far more. When you give in to your desire to connect but do not think about design, you experience tension, because there is an implicit contract with many of the people we connect with on social media. Every time you share your phone number, give out your email address, or hit accept, follow, or friend, it is like you make an unstated commitment. You are available and accessible. Do that more than 150 times, and I doubt there is a single person listening who is under 150, and you blow your natural limit. No wonder social media makes you feel overwhelmed. Digital has a habit of showing up in the strangest and most intrusive ways. And when 450 or 4,500 people have access to you digitally, you get inundated in a way you cannot possibly respond to without completely stressing yourself out. People have far better manners than technology does. Face to face, most people see the nuance of whether it is a good time to ask someone a question. We respect where our friends are at and err on the side of restraint. Technology removes that nuance. Digital messages are always sent at the convenience of the sender, never at the convenience of the recipient. Physical proximity has good manners that digital proximity has not learned. A final unusual element of the digital world is that digital proximity not only gives us disproportionate access, but in addition creates unnatural relationships. Next time you are sorting through your messages or social feed, do a quick audit of how many times someone says, "love you," or "hey buddy," or some other expression of affection. Then ask yourself, is this the kind of relationship I am really capable of having with all these people? You simply cannot be close enough to most people to have an authentic, deep, mutual relationship with them. Yet the language we are all increasingly using has lost sight of that. As a result, you lose your own priorities in the process of promising too much to too many, only to end up with too little to share. Too little time, too little energy, and too little bandwidth. The number of digital requests is far bigger than the number you were designed to handle. What should you do with all this? I suggest using Dunbar's numbers as your digital filter. Identify the 3 to 5 in your inner circle and the 12 to 15 in your support group. And while you likely do not need to name the wider 150, keep that concept in mind when you get a request and ask yourself, is this person someone I am in a real relationship with? Then respond accordingly. Get back to your 3 to 5 as quickly as you can, because they are your lifeblood. Reply to your next 12 to 15 with a little less urgency, but treat them like they matter to you, because they do. The 150 are people you want to value, but you do not need to give them the kind of immediate response you would give to the innermost circles. And the rest of humanity? Be kind, but put up some boundaries. You literally were not designed to handle that many people. Decide how quickly you will respond to and how often you will reach out to your best friends, and tribe. The principle is simple. Stop treating everyone the same, because all relationships are not the same. The depth of the relationship should determine the depth and speed of your response. I respond to my family pretty much immediately. I will get back to my 3 to 5 within the hour, unless I am in the middle of really deep work in my green zone. I usually get back to my 12 to 15 within a few hours and always within the same day. My tribe, probably same day or within 48 hours. Everyone else, those are people I or my team will get back to within a few days or sometimes not at all. This approach solves an age-old problem, that the people you care about least end up taking up the time you should be spending on the people you care about most. The people who need you most should get an undistracted you. Others can wait. Deep down, most of us are people pleasers. I am. The challenge with people pleasing is that you end up pleasing all the wrong people and ignoring the right ones. I hope this has helped you sort through the maze of relationships that make up life today. The filters and criteria you have learned should help you do the things that matter most with the people who matter most, and be surprisingly undistracted doing so. When you do that well, your green zone will produce far more than you imagined it could, and your yellow and red zones can absorb the necessary relationships that are left. Speaking of life, though, before we wrap up, we will turn to one more strategy that will help you realize this theory in real life. It involves your calendar. This will help you cement all the progress you have made and make it part of your daily reality. Ready? Chapter 10, The Big Sync, How to Synchronize Your Time, Energy, and Priorities Every Day. If you reflect on how your time gets spoken for, you will be amazed at how often it happens, because you get caught off guard. When my kids were still in elementary school, I walked into a Tuesday night board meeting. Jason pulled me aside. "What are you doing next Saturday?" he asked. I pulled out my calendar, looked at Saturday, and saw it was empty. Nothing," I replied with a half smile. Inside, I was wincing. "What are you doing next Saturday?" is rarely an innocent question. It usually means, I have an idea that involves something you do not want to do, like helping me move a piano. My mind started racing. Saturday was supposed to be my day off. It was the only day that week when my sons and wife, Tony, were home at the same time, and I had promised I would be with them. I could already hear Tony saying, "How could you say yes on your only day off? Why didn't you ask me? How come you said yes to him and no to your kids?" And of course she would be right. Jason snapped me back to the moment. "Great," he said. "We're having a party at my place Saturday afternoon with a bunch of people from my work. Want to come? I'd love for you to meet them." Well, now I felt trapped. What could I say? I resurrected my half smile, put on a well-mannered voice, and eked out, Sure, I'd love to go." There it was, another Saturday when I was not doing what I really wanted or needed to do. And that is the problem with blank space on your calendar. Again and again, it trips you up. Blank space on your calendar is a trap. It looks like freedom, but it is really jail disguised as liberty. The moment you think the white space on your calendar gives you freedom, disappointment is right around the corner. For all the reasons we have covered so far, there are 1,000 things that will command your attention on any day that looks free and clear. The most important things will get hijacked by urgent things you never planned on doing. You will be disappointed, and the people closest to you will pay a price. What you will discover is that the key to helping you thrive is to schedule all your priorities, including family time. Moving to a fixed calendar, which we will call the Thrive Calendar, ties together everything we have learned so far and makes it work in your everyday life. Developing your own Thrive Calendar will protect your green zone, leverage your yellow and red zones, and ensure that the things and people that matter to you are the things you spend your time on. It is also the opposite of how I used to live and how most people live. To demonstrate that, take a moment and pull out your calendar right now. I am serious. Do that. I will wait. Got it? Flip ahead 6 months from today's date. What do you see? Most people would see not much, if anything, and that is the problem. Blank calendars create all kinds of issues. On the one hand, they engender a deep and pervasive false hope. You think about how busy you are right now, but you look ahead and see all the blank space and think that relief is coming. Only that is what you thought 6 months ago, and just the opposite happened. Despite all the blank space, you get slammed again and again. Control your calendar so others stop controlling you. A blank calendar is pretty much a guarantee that you will spend your time on everyone else's priorities, not yours. To change that, decide how you will spend your time before others decide for you. If you do not decide ahead of time how to spend your time, others will. Decide how you will spend your time before others decide for you. Pre-scheduling your calendar is different from keeping a to-do list. So many overwhelmed people have long to-do lists but get no further ahead. The reason they fail at task management is that they have a clear sense of what matters, but not a clear sense of when to get it done. Taking charge of your calendar puts you in control of your day, not your day in control of you. Your intentions become your new rhythm. Underneath the Thrive calendar is a simple concept. A fixed calendar is a predecision about how to spend your work and personal time, most often in repeating appointments with yourself, week after week, year after year. Embracing the Thrive calendar means you will schedule time ahead of time to do what you are best at when you are at your best. Develop your gift, work on your business, not just in it, rest, connect with family, nurture your spiritual life, spend most of your people time with your best people, and do your least energizing work when you are least energetic. Best of all, it is simple. Because you're going to set up repeating appointments with yourself, this does not take you 2 hours a week to set up. In fact, it takes you no time most weeks, because you have set the patterns in advance. It is effective because you have scheduled the things and people nobody ever asks you to schedule, your priorities that always seem to get hijacked. Because content creation is some of the most valuable work I do, I devote much of my green zone each day to it. I do not need to get more specific than that on my calendar, because I am always writing something. I just set aside the time to write, and every day I work on something from my task list during those hours. The point is simple. You become what you repeatedly do. When you co-opt the rhythms of your everyday life to work for you, not against you, it changes everything. Everyone's calendar looks different, but before you set up yours, I will share a few examples of priorities I fix in my Thrive calendar. I spend my first hour every day quietly, sipping hot tea, reflecting, praying, and reading scripture. I save my mornings for things that I'm best at and that energize me. Writing, thinking, strategizing, planning, but mostly writing. I block off some evenings and weekends for personal and family time. I keep Fridays free of scheduled meetings so I can finish projects, dream a little, do some errands, and on good weeks, take off early. Meetings usually have to fit into designated slots in the afternoon or late morning once I am out of my green zone. I set a maximum number of meetings every week, which these days is 15. Again, your calendar will look different and should look different from mine. You need to tailor it to your gifting, calling, and circumstances. By setting aside a few hours every day to tackle whatever matters most to you, professionally and personally, you will be able to experience the kind of productivity and nurtured relationships that you thought was impossible. There are 4 key decisions for you to make when you design your Thrive calendar. First, decide what you will and will not do within each zone. Second, decide whom you will and will not meet with. Third, decide when you will do specific tasks within each zone. And fourth, decide where you will do your work, especially your green zone work. Your green zone is, of course, the most important zone to protect in your Thrive calendar. If you craft your green zone well, your yellow and red zones can act as catch basins for some of the daily issues that crop up, as well as for your regular work that does not rank high enough for green zone space. Step 1 is to revisit your energy clock from Chapter 4. It is time to integrate your clock even more with your daily rhythms and routines. Step 2 is to sync your zones with your priorities. It is now time to sync your zones with your most important priorities, both tasks and people. Keep the priorities at the broadest level. If planning is part of your job, just keep it as planning rather than plan fourth quarter off-site, which belongs on a task list. You want to calendar only your appropriate priorities in each zone. You can download a template for this priorities chart at atyourbesttoday.com. Step 3 is to schedule time to do what you are best at when you are at your best. Finally, to truly be at your best, block time to do what you are best at when you are at your best by assigning priorities to your green, yellow, and red zones. What you most want to establish in your calendar is your ongoing patterns for each zone. Your calendar will reflect the priorities you have just outlined and will set them up in repeating appointments so you ensure you do what matters most. And remember, when designing your calendar, think about your life, not just your leadership. Do not overcrowd it and budget time for rest. A rested you is a better you. I've shared a sample calendar in the book based on my current patterns where you can see that the zones are all protected and general priorities have slots. You can add specific tasks and appointments on top of this, but the rhythms should be the same week to week. As you already know, your life consists of a series of ongoing patterns, so you should build the healthiest ones into your weekly schedule ahead of time. This can be a fantastic strategy to guard against spending most nights toggling between Netflix and your email inbox when you owe it to yourself and the people you love to be off. Now, a reality check. Will your week ever turn out perfectly? Not always. Life happens. Meetings pop up, work piles up, but now you can see what you are committed to doing. If you guarded your green zone most days, then your most important objectives are done, and you would have also protected your rest and family times. Because you are planning ahead and can see your schedule well in advance, you will know that you are on the road for 10 days in October, and much of that green zone time will be spent in airports and on flights. Knowing that, you can reduce the number of meetings you have the week before and week after to make sure your green zone is especially protected. No more surprises. So go ahead and take your first run at your personal Thrive calendar. You can download a template for it at atyourbesttoday.com. This is how you move everything you have learned from theory to reality. You are deciding how you will spend your time before others decide for you. And that is the key to thriving. Wait, what about my team? You're probably thinking this might be a really great design for solopreneurs and executives. But what about teams? What happens if you are not in control of your calendar and your boss tells you that you have to be at a meeting right in the heart of your green zone? This might be a good time to recall that you likely have remarkable control over 128 to 148 of your 168 hours each week. Most work weeks are about 40 hours, and rarely does your employer dictate how you spend 100% of your working hours. But back to the team question. What happens if, say, your leadership team of 5 has 2 early risers who have morning green zones, 2 night owls whose green zones are later afternoon, and 1 person somewhere in between? This is where team discussions come in really handy. One large organization I worked with mapped out their team zones on a flowchart, only to discover that their weekly executive team meeting was scheduled during everyone's red zone. When they saw this, they literally laughed out loud. Suddenly it became clear why no one liked that meeting and why they never seemed to get anything done. They moved the meeting to a time when the team members were either in green or in yellow zone territory, and things improved dramatically. Maybe the reason everyone hates the Friday afternoon meeting is not that it is Friday afternoon, but that most people are trying to stay awake. Finding team rhythms is a question of compromise. Some meetings might warrant taking up a lot of green zone bandwidth. Others might fit better into most people's yellow zones. When it comes to managing a team's time and energy, greater awareness is the first step toward greater effectiveness. Now back to Jason, who was not trying to hijack my priorities. He was just trying to advance his. If I had had a Thrive calendar back then, and Jason had asked me what I was doing next Saturday, it would have been a very different conversation. I would have taken out my calendar, looked at Saturday, looked Jason in the eye, and said, "Oh, I have a commitment." Guess what Jason probably would have said? "Oh, that's too bad. I have a party at my place, and I would have loved for you to be there." And I would have replied, "Thanks, Jason, I appreciate it. It was kind of you to think of me." 99% of the time, That would end the conversation. You do not need to tell Jason that the commitment is to yourself or your kids. You simply have a commitment. Healthy people respect the boundaries you set. Despite your lingering apprehension, the vast majority of the time, people will not question what that commitment is. If they ask what you have going on, just tell them, I have a commitment with my family that day. They will get it and respect it. If you are still not sure that will work, you are probably worried about the tiny percentage of the population that is unhealthy. Other people's needs do not have to become your guilt. The Thrive cycle is designed to be a virtuous loop. While the stress spiral pulls you down, the Thrive cycle moves you into a much more sustainable pace. Often when I engage with material like this, I have a nagging question. How do I know I am doing this right? The Thrive cycle should leave you feeling totally different. Your life and leadership should feel easier, not harder. Sure, you are making some tough calls, but when the Thrive cycle is working, you should see these markers. First, you are accomplishing your priorities. Second, you are getting better at what you do. Third, you love meeting with people again. Fourth, you have time for yourself and your family. And fifth, you are happier. Naturally, your day-to-day will vary, but if you are not feeling most of those 5 markers most of the time, then take another look at your Thrive cycle rhythms. Maybe your energy clock needs some adjustment, or you've got to play with how you are spending your zones. I have adjusted my Thrive calendar dozens of times over the years because life keeps changing. In the next chapter, I will give you some strategies to do that, because I promise you, you will get into an optimal rhythm, and then the unpredictability of life will try to suck you right back into the stress spiral. You will learn how to make sure that does not happen, and that everything you have learned so far really does set you up to thrive for years to come. Chapter 11, Thrive On: How to Recalibrate When Life Blows Up Your Perfectly Crafted Plan. We have been all the way through the Thrive cycle and put it to work for you with the Thrive calendar. You might think we have escaped the sucking vortex of the stress spiral and left stress far behind. If only. Stress is so pervasive that it can pull you back in a heartbeat. The pro tips and strategies I have shared so far are there for a reason. Overwhelm, overcommitment, and overwork knock on my door every day, as they will yours. The strategies you have learned will keep stress off your property unless you let your guard down. Or sometimes stress gets in because your circumstances have changed enough that your Thrive calendar needs rebooting. That is what this chapter is designed to do, to give you expert-level skills for recalibrating when life blows up your perfectly crafted plan. I have stayed out of burnout for a decade and a half, not just because of what you have learned so far, but also because of what you are about to discover next. Life is difficult and complicated, and when stress seeps back in, the adjustment strategies you will find in this chapter should get you back on track almost immediately. Before we dive into the strategies, a final thought about stress. One of the reasons stress is so pervasive is that, in the strangest way, it is kind of attractive. As much as you might think you hate being stressed, stress has become such a universal condition that it is almost sexy. You ready for this? There's a part of you that likes being stressed. Your friends enjoy it a bit too much as well. In this culture, you almost have to be stressed. For an ambitious person, it is rather unthinkable not to be stressed. You have lived stressed so long you do not remember what unstressed feels like. If you had to be dead honest with yourself, you sheepishly feel like you need stress. You like stress. It is validating. Am I right? Stress is a good bad word. Our culture hates stress yet thrives on it. As a result, the pullback towards stress is almost gravitational. Stress is a badge of honor in the hamster wheel life everybody is living. If you are going to live in the Thrive cycle long term, the best thing you can do is break up with stress and decide once and for all you are just not going to live that way. Stress will keep texting you, making false promises, and swearing that this time it will be better. Regardless, the smart thing is to walk away. It is a toxic relationship. You may soon get to a place where the Thrive cycle is working far better than you imagined it would. You are back at the gym, you are sleeping well, you have more family time than you have had in years, and you are crushing the projects at work. You are in the flow. But it will all come crashing down way sooner than you think, unless you decide it will not. The good news is there are often warning signs that your current flow is about to be threatened. Things like growth, a promotion, a new job, having a child, staff changes, travel, moving, a change in your health, the loss of a loved one, a personal crisis, a breakup, losing a job, decline in your industry, a new hobby, new friends, or a vacation can all throw off your beautifully designed calendar. What do you do when life inevitably interrupts your well-designed plans? You cannot hire or hope your way out of overwhelm. Instead, you need to lead yourself out of it. Most people change when the pain associated with the status quo is greater than the pain associated with change. They spend months or years letting circumstances determine their stress levels and happiness levels. Wise people do not wait to adapt. If you can see overwhelm coming, if you feel it tapping at your door, get proactive. Do not wait to go under before you recalibrate. Your life and leadership are constantly changing, and your approach needs to change with them. In an overwhelmed culture, your agility is the cap on your ability. Here are some practices that will help you keep thriving despite changing conditions. First, act as soon as you anticipate. Some change comes at you from out of the blue, but much of it does not. At times, you get a warning when your world is about to be altered. In the same way, new parents get a 9-month warning. Sometimes your boss gives you a heads up that your promotion takes effect in a month, or you know you have 2 weeks until your new location opens. When you get even a bit of advance notice, one of the best things you can do is start planning at once. Take some time to anticipate how your rhythms might change. Maybe right now you love 5 to 8 a.m. as your most productive time. Chances are, your new daughter is not going to value your morning sanctuary the way you do, at least in the first few months. If you anticipate the systemic change you will need to make, you will be far better off than if you just let the change happen and respond after. You may not anticipate perfectly what the change is going to feel like, and that is normal. So as it happens and after it happens, tweak things again. Fixing things before they break is a little like doing preventive maintenance on a car. Fixing something before it breaks is far less costly than fixing it after it breaks, in terms of both time and money. Preventive maintenance on your life works the same way. If you anticipate, instigate. Doing something before change happens is the best way to be ready when change happens. When you see or sense change happening, here are 5 questions that can help you act as you anticipate. What is about to change? What opportunities and obstacles will the change likely present? What is most likely to happen to the demands on my time? What is most likely to happen to my energy levels? And what adjustments can I make to my Thrive calendar now to prepare for the new reality? Next, recalibrate fast. Sometimes you can see change coming, but often you cannot. When that happens, and it will, come back to some of the fundamentals of the Thrive cycle and prepare to recalibrate your Thrive calendar. One of the best ways to begin this process is by tracking how you have actually been spending your time recently. Even though you are far more conscious of how you are spending your time now, sometimes there is a gap between what we think we are doing and what we are actually doing. A time audit to figure out where your time is really going is a great way to get to the truth. Similarly, make sure the hours you selected for your green, yellow, and red zones are still accurate. In addition, look at the demands on your time. Often they will creep up without your realizing it. Growth is one among many challenges. Moving from employed to unemployed or dealing with a season of stagnation can mean that what used to be effective for you is not anymore. When you find yourself in a place of unexpected change, work through these 8 questions to help you diagnose the problem. What is taking my time that should not be? What do I need more time to work on? What is wasting my time? How are my zones changing? Whom should I start meeting with? Whom should I not be meeting with anymore? What is changing in the nature of my inbound requests? And what categories do I need to rethink? These questions can help you quickly recalibrate your Thrive calendar. Finally, do the math. A third practice you may want to consider involves rethinking 3-time allocations. These adjustments are helpful because as you live and lead longer, your priorities and preferences will continue to evolve. When that happens, I have found it helpful to review 3 key ratios that predict how well you will thrive in the future. The 3 calculations are the percentage of time you spend alone versus with people, the percentage of time you spend in meetings, and the percentage of time you spend at home versus on the road. Calculating these 3 percentages will give you insight into how you best function. You likely have an ideal percentage for each, and as you exceed your limits, you will find your stress level growing. The idea is to figure out a rough percentage split for all 3 factors, and then design your calendar according to how much time you will ideally spend doing each. Let's start with calculation 1, time alone versus time with people. Your time essentially divides into 2 categories, time spent alone and time spent with other people. The question is, how much time should you spend on each? The answer is whatever mix you need to thrive. Extroverts generally refuel by being with people. Introverts tend to refuel by being alone. Any idea which one describes you better? Because introversion and extroversion change with time, I have been on both ends of the spectrum. I am naturally wired as an extrovert, but around age 40 I noticed a shift. Since I recovered from burnout, solitude has become more of an oasis for me. There is no right or wrong here, just awareness. Pay attention to how your interaction with other people affects your energy and your mood. Obviously, we all need a mix of both. Loneliness can corrode the soul, but all people all the time can also be deeply stressful. So what is your ideal mix? These days, mine is about 60% alone and 40% with people. It does not matter what your mix is, nearly as much as it matters that you know your mix. When you get the percentage close to optimal, you will enjoy meeting with people and enjoy being alone. So what do you think your mix is? Once you discover it, adjust your Thrive calendar accordingly. Calculation 2 is time spent in meetings. If there is one complaint I hear from leaders, it is that they feel like they have way too many meetings. Most of us have a maximum number of hours we can spend in meetings before they start to adversely affect us. I produce my best work when I spend about 40% of my work time in meetings and 60% of my time working solo. I can stretch it to 50-50 during busy seasons, but once I go above that for more than a week, it drains me. Another way to think about it is whether there is simply a maximum number of meetings you can take in a week. My current meeting cap is 15. Once I exceed that, I get tired and far less productive. Again, your number will be different. But take the time to figure out your ideal ratio and perhaps meeting cap and adjust your Thrive calendar accordingly. In the real world, you are not always going to be able to stay at your ideal ratio or under your cap. But even knowing this can be helpful because it can alert you and your team ahead of time that a particular week is going to be challenging. Finally, calculation 3 is time at home versus on the road. Maybe you travel only once a year for vacation, but many people travel much more than that. As soon as you start traveling overnight or missing breakfast and dinner at home because of travel, it becomes something you need to monitor if you want to thrive. In the same way that you have an effective meeting cap, you probably also have a maximum amount of time you can be on the road before it becomes counterproductive. I know leaders who do not mind being on the road 200 days a year. I have other friends who decided they wanted to be away from home only about a couple of weeks a year. Again, there is no magic answer here, but there is your answer. Keep adjusting. Your mix in all 3 categories will be unique to you, but knowing the conditions under which you flourish will make you better able to design your ideal calendar and thrive on. The fun news is, all these tools and skills you are learning become more familiar and natural as time moves on. Soon they will become as comfortable as a favorite sweater. Your team will also become accustomed to the new patterns. It is pretty routine now for my staff to tell me, "Your January is already at capacity. You can't take on anything else." I have gotten much better at realizing we all have limits. As an employer, You do not want perpetually stressed employees. People bring their whole selves to the job, and when they are thriving, so does your company. And now you know this too. If for some reason you are not thriving, simply adjust. You have learned an awful lot about how to live in a way today that will help you thrive tomorrow. But doing what you are best at when you are at your best has one final benefit we have not talked about yet, possibly the best benefit of all. So let us go there next. Chapter 12. Hello from the future you. It's not just what you accomplish, it's who you're becoming. Well, you have done it. You have escaped the giant sucking vortex that is the stress spiral and learned how to stay out of it. You are living in a way today that will help you thrive tomorrow by doing what you are best at when you are at your best. The deep satisfaction will continue as you tuck your kids in every night, sleep sweetly yourself, get more done in less time at work, get that book written, or launch that podcast. You will join the growing list of people who are getting their lives and leadership back. Progress can be deeply motivating. But there is another motivation, one that will keep you engaged not just for months or years, but perhaps for your entire life. If you wonder whether the long obedience in the same direction is all worth it, I want you to imagine yourself not tomorrow or next month, but years from now, perhaps decades from now. Imagine the future you at 50 or 65 or 85. I am a decade and a half into my journey with the Thrive cycle. It is not like I do not experience stress anymore. I do, but in greatly reduced measure compared with my 30s. A decade and a half of embracing the strategies in this audiobook have produced a much better work in me. Not a finished work yet, but a work with which I am much happier, and so are those around me. Being at your best is to some extent about what you accomplish, but to a much deeper extent, it is about creating the space you need to focus on who you are becoming. Many of the stress stories and hard moments that animate this audiobook are drawn from my younger years. So let me catch you up with my current situation. I was recently driving down the highway with my youngest son, who is now in his mid-20s. He asked me, "Dad, any idea why you disliked camping so much when we were kids?" Fair question. We used to camp a lot when the kids were younger because it was inexpensive and because my family loved it. Me, not so much. For years, I despised everything to do with camping. What I disliked most was how little control this control freak had over his surroundings. I am not very physical or handy. Putting up a tent is mysterious. I do not know how to tie up those sleeping bags that have shoelace straps. Most of all, the clean freak in me dislikes rain and mud. Every time we would go camping, it would rain. The last time I went camping with my family when my sons were young, it rained so hard I packed everyone into the car, left our stuff at the site, threw a temper tantrum the average 2-year-old would be proud of, and drove home in the dark, sulking the whole trip. I disliked camping so much that I even framed it as a theological issue. If God created us to be intelligent enough to invent electricity and live indoors, is not it unfaithful to go back into the woods? Exactly. So, that was the end of my camping career. Until recently, my family never gave up on camping. They just stopped inviting me. Now that my boys are in their 20s, they cracked open the question of whether I would ever try camping again. Recently, my son and his girlfriend gave my wife, Tony, the gift of a weekend away camping with them for Mother's Day. As they planned the trip, I did something I never thought I would do. I asked whether I could come too. The motivation? A few uninterrupted days with my wife and grown kids is an attractive proposition, even if it involves some potential suffering for me. My son, remembering well the low maturity level of his father in the wilderness, made a rule. "Dad, if you're coming, you can't complain, no matter what." I accepted the challenge. Camping in perfect conditions would lead to little complaining. What I had to prepare myself for were imperfect conditions. Turns out that was a good idea. The kind of camping my family does these days involves going way off the grid. No trailers, no power, no showers, no running water. You pack everything on your back and in a canoe, then paddle miles to find your site. We had to paddle and portage, which involves carrying your canoe across land, 5 miles to reach our campsite. That is about a 4-hour trek. Within 15 minutes of paddling onto the first lake, we heard thunder. Minutes later, it started pouring. We were drenched. The portages were expert level. I'm not an expert. Over the course of our 3-day trek, we had one sunny day, but for the rest, it rained. When we finally left, the rain returned on cue, and we paddled 3.5 hours back to the car, soaked once again. Guess what? I did not complain. Surprisingly, I enjoyed it. In fact, I am planning on going again. So what changed? I did. In the car that day, as I unpacked my previous disdain for camping, I told my son how ill-equipped I felt for life and leadership in my 30s, that despite all the success we were experiencing externally, I felt like I was falling apart internally. With tears in my eyes at times, I have told my boys how much I regret the anxious, upset, frustrated dad I was in moments when they were younger. We talked about the changes in my life over the last 15 years, how figuring out how to live at a more sustainable pace has left me in a much better frame of mind. A frame of mind I wished he had known when he was 4. Some people say they do not have regrets. Well, I do. I cannot get those early years back, but I can live differently moving forward. So we talked about it. And as I sat there by the campfire, looking out at the lake and the stars, I was thankful. Thankful I could go with my family into a place I would not choose and enjoy it. Doing what I am best at when I am at my best has helped me become a better communicator. Understanding my zones has helped me get far more done in much less time and step into my purpose with joy and conviction. In the end, who you are becoming is so much more important than what you are doing. But all of that pales in comparison with the character shift that is happening, the much better marriage, the deeper relationships with my now grown sons, the time I spend in prayer and scripture every morning, the peace with who I am and whom I was made to be, the hobbies, friendships, and rest I enjoy every day. In the end, who you are becoming is so much more important than what you are doing. It is time you stepped into the future. You are going to love the person you meet.